It's a pleasant good night to you. This is Marcia Weeks, and you're watching the Marcia Weeks Show. We're coming to you live from Barbados. Beautiful Barbados. And tonight we have a great show lined up for you. Tonight we have with us our usual guests, of course. Caswell Franklyn is going to join us. Maxine McLean is also going to join us. But coming from Ghana, we have Honorable Sam George is going to be joining us. And we're excited about that because we would like to know exactly what is happening to Ghana since they have passed that law concerning the LGBTQ community in Ghana. There's just a lot of discussion all over the world about it, and people are beginning to worry about Ghana. We're going to also be having the former vice president of Guyana, Mr. Carl Greenidge, is going to be on, and he's going to speak about Haiti. Because, right now there's just a lot of discussion about Haiti in the media because of the unrest that is happening there. And, this concerns all of us. So we're going to have that discussion tonight as well. But of course, we have to discuss what's happening in Barbados, right? So we started the whole discussion about BRA and about the Barbados Revenue Authority, in case somebody thinks I'm talking about BRA that you wear. And we are talking about also land tax and the way that is administered in Barbados, where some do believe that land tax should be abolished. And so we're going to look at all of those different things that's happening concerning Haiti. We want to really discuss should we really be sending troops to Haiti? Do we have that kind of capacity and the training of our soldiers? Should we be doing that? So these are just some of the topics that we're going to be discussing tonight. And of course, it's going to be quite engaging. We want you to comment, we want you to share, we want you to like. So make sure you're doing that. Let me just welcome everybody who is on tonight. I can see that. Oh my Lord, Loyal Daughter 66 has been on from 3:33, 3:31, and says, "Good evening, loyal opposition. Let's keep the pressure on. Changes are coming. Our freedom is here. So stand up, Barbadians, and keep on keeping on until full freedom is realized." Loyal Daughter. That's Loyal Daughter here in Barbados. Tracy Barrow. Tracy Barrow, you have a grandmother who is 100 years old today, Marjorie Brathwaite. We want to send out a big birthday greeting to Marjorie Brathwaite. Marjorie Brathwaite, if you're listening, happy birthday. You're 100 years old. That's not 100 days. That's such an accomplishment. Congratulations, Madame Marjorie. And congratulations to you, Tracy. Gelbiz, good evening. A blessed and wonderful evening to the loyal sons and daughters, all of this opposition. And Erwin Nurse says, good night, loyal opposition. Guys, I hope we're sharing. We're early tonight, so we're going to need you to share. Rose 5111. Good evening, all loyal opposition family. Hoping everyone is having a good day. I had a blast today. I had a great day. Spending it out with our panelists today. We had a lovely lunch, lovely brunch. Brunch is what we had today, not lunch. With everybody, we had a few people missing, but majority of us, we were there, Diana. So we had a great time. Born again, good night, born again at 48. Good night. Natasha Hope says, good night, patriots. Now, Natasha, I'm hoping that you're sharing. One of the reasons that we're on early, it's because we want to make sure that when the Honorable Sam George comes on, that we have a full house, all right? So we're using this half hour to make sure that we're sharing. So those of you who you're normally logged on, and the others who would not, they don't realize that we're on at 6:30, we're going to need you to share on Facebook, on Instagram, share the link. Just share out the YouTube link and let everybody know, sharing your WhatsApp groups. because we're going to have a very enlightening show tonight. Okay, so I need you to share. Thank you so much. Margaret Pollard, good evening. Good evening. Sir Alfred, all the way from Brooklyn, NYC. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, he says, class is in session. TMWS is where the knowledge can be found and the truth is told. And that's what it is. You caught the vision, Sir Alfred Benjamin. That's correct. That's the Marcia Week show. This is where we agitate, we educate, we motivate, we mobilize Africa and the African diaspora. That's what we do here on the Marcia Week show. And Jefferson Sobers, he's joining. Annette Power, good night. Good night, Tony Paris. Yes, Dr. Ferdinand Nichols, he's not on tonight, but he will be on tomorrow night. Good night, loyal opposition. Welcome to another critically important show. Oh, wonderful. P. Hoy. Oh, good evening. I know I owe you a call, but today has been extremely busy. Oh, Lumumba Batson, good evening. Oh, I'm seeing some of my people on here. We on, family. Yes. Lumumba, please share. Please share in your WhatsApp groups. Everybody share this in your WhatsApp groups. Share to your on your Facebook pages, on your Instagram pages. Just share it out to your friends, and let them know that we're on. We're early, but we're on. Yasif Greenidge, good evening, everyone. Oh wow, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, good evening, Kali B. Good evening, Wendy Ford Griffith. Good evening, Ricky Pinder. Good evening. Oh, Saving the Lost Ministers International. Good evening. Good evening. Wow. I hope Sanchez, Anthony Oliver, and everybody. I hope I haven't left off anybody who's telling me good evening. I don't want to do that. Sharon O. and Adrian X. Good evening. Good evening. Bajan Brett. Good evening. Guys, please share. Take the moment right now to share, right? To like, to subscribe. All right. And just let your friends and family, everybody know that we're on. This is going to be very, very groundbreaking tonight. This interview going to be very groundbreaking. Please share. Please share. Please share. Please share. But, we start with our national anthem. And I see Miss McLean is in the wings there, ready to come on. And we're going to chit chat tonight. Before Honorable Samuel George comes on. But even before we do that, we want to share the national anthem with you. All right. So we get ready for that. And while that is coming up, I'm going to ask you to continue to share, continue to like, continue to subscribe. Okay. Yes.
Oh
Barbados. Yes, Barbados. Yes, Barbados. So those of you who are joining us from any of the African countries, from Ghana, wherever, this is the flag of Barbados. This is Barbados. Okay. So whenever you see this flag, because we know the Ghanaian flag, so we want you to know our flag. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful beautiful Barbados, and it's always awesome to listen to the anthem and to sing the national anthem. Let me just welcome Miss Maxine McLean on with us tonight. Good night, ma'am. You're muted.
Hello and good evening to you, and thank you for a good morning and afternoon. And you notice that I am ready for the occasion.
Yes, I see you're donned in your beautiful African garb. Yes, so so we can lovely, lovely, lovely. I got a little tribute here. I had to put in a little something there. Yes, from Ghana, because we have with us one of our guests would be from Ghana, Honorable Sam George from Ghana. And of course, we have Mr. Carl GREENIDGE, former Vice President of Guyana, will be on with us a little later as well. We're also waiting on Caswell Franklyn and also Kimar Stewart. But while we wait on specifically Mr. George, who will be with us at 7 o'clock this evening. I want to. I thought we needed to just discuss a little bit about neocolonialism and its impact on Africa and the African diaspora. And because I think some of what we're discussing tonight, as we look at Haiti and then we look at what is happening in Guyana, and just Ghana, and some of the concerns that you hear, people are worried, what is America going to do now, to Ghana. You can't help but think that we are still so afraid of our oppressors, right? And
Right.
I'm looking at a definition, so we could have a working definition for colonialism tonight as we start this little discussion here. And Britannica tells us that it's a system in which the former colonial masters of a nation continue to dominate their colonial countries, such countries despite them being independent. It includes remains of colonialism that exists in different ways, including the use of colonial languages, which we see that happens, marginalization of cultures of indigenous people and other economic and political means of domination of such indigenous people by their former colonial masters. And especially, Miss McLean, when we talk about languages, even for us here in the English speaking Caribbean, let's talk about ourselves. We don't believe that someone is properly educated unless they can speak the Queen's English, because, and those are vestiges of the colonial, of our colonial rule, you know. So, Ms. McLean, what are your thoughts about the impact of neocolonialism on Africa and its diaspora? Do you see that as an issue that we need to?
It very much is an issue, and let me say, if you might allow me, because we may have a viewer from Uganda, which is 6 hours ahead. But if Sharura is watching, I say hello to him because he said he was hoping to catch this. You see, Marcia, your show goes far and wide. But
True.
the reality is, and you gave a good working definition, and it is really what I would describe as the vestige of the earlier system of colonialism or
Hmm.
colonization, where in the case of a number of European countries, England, Spain, France,
Hmm.
and so on, went across the world. I mean, if you take England, Britain, for example, the size of probably, I'm not even sure it's the size of Guyana, if I remember correctly, but
Right.
the world in pursuit of trade, and essentially a minority of people went and dominated significant numbers of individuals in several countries. If you think of India in relation to the UK, and of course the intention was to exploit the resources. As I said, a lot of this started with a search for markets for resources
Yes.
that informed the relationship. Now, of course, it came with an attitude of superiority, in terms of that what I would call a very racist um, philosophy or thinking, and because they were able to plant themselves firmly in these countries, at the point in time where for some of them they felt the need to separate themselves at the level of the political operations, but they
Hmm.
still need to continue domination. So, in essence, when you talk about neocolonialism, what you're talking about really is a mix of um, circumstances. You still have economic dominance, political interference, which is something we need to recognize, of course. We have cultural penetration or subjugation. You mentioned languages. If you go to a single country like Nigeria, for example, I mean,
Hmm.
there are so many languages spoken. Now, in fact, even in the context of Africa, the carving up, what I would describe as the carving up of the continent, in a conference in Europe where the colonial powers decided that they were going to divide it up to suit themselves, ignoring perhaps traditional, ethnic and religious and cultural differences, or how people came together. So, in essence, what you had is a system that has remained because of what transpired during that colonial period. It was the exploitation of these countries for the benefit of the people of the colonizing of the colonizers, the countries in the West. So they often left. I mean, different countries had different types of systems in place, and in many instances they left the countries without proper infrastructure, proper educational systems, etc. So, and most important, or very importantly, the control of the resources or the wealth of many of these countries by some of these people, I mean, who remained either physically or economically in control. For example, we know of the plantation system in this part of the world, which meant
Yes.
that large tracts of land would have been controlled and owned, whether you're talking about the Caribbean, or you're talking about a place like South Africa. So what you really have is a system where independence does not translate into what I would call effective independence, where countries are largely in control of their economies, of their societies, etc. And of course, another characteristic, of course, would be what we can describe as power imbalances, because
Yes.
and so really and truly, it is a continuing reality. It is one that has served to stymie or impact negatively on the growth
Making things when
of
he
many
was
of these
and he
economies,
had charge.
and so that created a number of problems. So on several fronts, we see the continuation of some of the problems created by the systems that went before, and it ends up meaning that unless countries can wrestle control of
Yes.
of these various factors that people seek to retain under their control, we're gonna have some problems. We can explain what is happening.
Yeah. I'm thinking of us here in the English speaking Caribbean, and let's just bring it to Barbados. What are
Mhm.
some of the vestiges of that, of the colonialism that you're seeing, or you're seeing as we're saying, the impact of this neocolonialism on us here in 2024?
Well, I mean, I think, and let me say that some of it you can probably argue there are some positive elements to it. Some people might argue because if you look at the British, for example, one of the things that they would have done in this part of the world, I mean, we would have inherited their political system,
Mhm.
with its strengths and its weaknesses, our educational system. They left some kind of structures in terms of government systems and that kind of thing. Other countries basically just exploited and left probably some countries in what I might describe in a worse state. So we still have a lot of the values, good or bad, in terms of our culture. If you look at the way we dress traditionally and so on. So in a sense, almost every facet of life you can see the imprint, whether it is significant or minor, that you would see those things continue. One of the difficulties for me is this notion that for some reason what we may consider indigenous is seen as inferior in a lot of, for a lot of people. So in
Right.
essence, you're mentioning the Caribbean, and you saw it before, and to some extent, well, people felt if they needed health care, it was better if you got it elsewhere. If you wanted
Yes.
education, it was better, um, and things of that nature. So in other words, foreign is better in a lot of instances. Of course, that myth has been blown out of the water in several respects for many decades. But for some people, they still have these conscious, and I would say subconscious sometimes, notions of
Correct.
what I call inferiority, superiority, based on us being deemed in the minds of some as inferior or less than,
Hmm.
and others as more than, and therefore we should try to emulate those. So those are some of the myths that we have to deal with. The structures of our economy, our educational system, as I said, you can still see vestiges of those things. Ownership of wealth is also reflective of that historical relationship with
Yes.
the colonial powers.
Yes. Yes. I'm seeing. Thank you, Miss McLean. I'm seeing Mr. Franklin, and he has to let me know if he's ready to come in to the studio. Good night, Mr. Franklin. It's great to see you again. We were out today. It's good to see you. You are muted.
Yes, it was good to be with you all. I see you on the show, but we don't ever get together. So it was a wonderful to be there with everybody, but not everybody, but most of everybody who's on the show, and I felt a oneness kind of thing with them. I think we gotta do it again.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Most definitely, most definitely. It's good. It was great to see everybody, and we want to thank that viewer who made sure that we had a good brunch today, and that we could have some downtime, and that's the kind of support that we have on the show. I don't know how they're going to try to stop the show because this show, Miss McLean, belongs to the people of Barbados, and they are
Very much
making
so.
sure that everything. If you see my lovely backdrop there behind me, it's the people that decide to give me that backdrop. So it is a people show, right? It is a people show. They are making sure that it happens. So we wanna thank God for the people of Barbados. It's their show. But Mr. Franklin, we've been talking about colonialism or neocolonialism and its impact on Africa and the African diaspora. What are your thoughts on that?
for me to talk about neo-colonialism, I gotta talk about colonialism first,
Yes.
and because that is, and basically that is racism. It's racism because they have this superiority complex. They feel that they were better than all of us. They had to civilize us, and they conquered territories like India that was far more progressive than them. Africa, they brought people to Barbados who could recite the Quran, and you
Mm-hmm.
could and call them heathens because they have this superiority complex. They feel that the white people I'm talking about, they feel that they're better. You know, this book that I have here, I keep it and I read it ever so often, but I gotta take it in small doses because it might get me angry and go beat some white people. The it's called the Staying Power: The History of Black People in Britain. I first came across this book many years ago when a friend of mine, who he was married to a white woman, a white English woman, he said, "Guys, you know, when I if I had read this book before I married a woman, I got married to you, you know." Because he then saw how bad it was for black people, because he left Barbados and went to England, and he, you know, Barbados we still semi worship the white people, and but he went over there and he found a white lady who liked him and stuff, and they got together, had children. But he told me he would not have married if he knew all the stuff that they did to white people, to black people, you know, and they didn't classify us as like blacks, and you were all kafirs, you know, the term that they use for mostly the Indians, you know, you were not black, you were just a kafir. And also too, because and this book tells me, you know, they said that the demanding men, you know, there was a kind of jealousy too, because demanding men, that they said that their members were, you know, and that the white people got jealous of that too, you know, because they saw that um, as something that they have to get rid of, because they couldn't. I'll tell you what happened when the men, their wives saw demanding men, you know, those fellows who they would go and experiment with it, and it was a death sentence if you got caught. The wife would be divorced or beaten or something. So, but the men got enticed, and if you didn't satisfy the white woman, she would tell the husband, "You trouble she." So you were between a rock and a hard place. So you better go and do what you had to do and hope that your husband don't find out you live. So it was jealousy, and it was the education, because a lot of philosophy, maths, whatever, came from Africa. They wanted to destroy that. They wanted to believe that they were better, and they even imposed this one wife thing on us. You know, this was not it's part of the African experience. So they enslaved our ancestors, and it wasn't for anything to do with any civilizing the natives. They wanted to make money. They came into the Caribbean and India, but the place is hot. They couldn't handle it. So they brought people who they think could work in these fields. It was nothing more than that. And abolition wasn't something that Wilberforce got for us, and it became uneconomical to maintain slaves when you could free them, and then you didn't have to be responsible for their food, because there wasn't any medical bills or anything, so that if you got sick, you died. You know, so it was basically, it was cheaper. The Otto Badger in Antigua, who was a member of the assembly, Antigua didn't go through the apprenticeship system, where they had to go this 4 years before they finally released them, because he said, Ben, in the Antigua house, he said he did the numbers. He was always opposed to it, but when he did the numbers, he realized it was far cheaper to till his fields with free labor, because they paid them pittance, than to keep the slaves captured. So but they didn't have anywhere to go. Antigua wasn't too big. Same thing with Barbados. And if you get escaped in Barbados, we're going to hide under somebody's cellar. It didn't work out for us. Jamaica, they had a better deal. They could go in the hills. You had the Maroons. But then they gave us independence. It was negotiating from a position of superiority. If you remember your show, Marcia, when we had the clip where the guy who was supposed to be handling the chairman of the negotiating group, he was telling Barrow he got to apologize for something he said, because he figured that Barrow was inferior to him. So Barrow let him know who was the boss, you know. And but that was it. They always had this superiority, and they negotiated terms and conditions of our independence that will still leave them, especially in the francophone countries, leave them in charge. leave them raping the country still. Right now, all it no. France is still in control with the economies. A lot of these francophone countries that they gave independence to the 60s, 50s, and 60s, because France got to print the money, France got to do anything. So it is from a position of they believe that they're superior. And some of us allow them to believe that they're superior. So we have also embraced this neo-colonial existence because the black people still think of these people as massa,
Yes.
and that is our problem. You know, we have a collective, and I'm not happy to say it, but we have a collective inferiority complex among black people. There got a few people out there who don't have it, and they would challenge me. But when you look at the majority, you know that is something that was bred into to us. And it is hard to get it out. It has like become part of the DNA. So you would like Maxine would always complain, but people will talk about a black woman, but a white lady. We still have that because yeah, you know, but it's always a
Yeah.
white lady,
Yeah. I
a
agree.
white
Totally agree with you.
a white gentleman, but a black man. You know,
Yeah.
it is what they have bred into us, and we have not been able in these all these years after independence. I don't think it's gonna happen in my lifetime, and I hope to live well long.
Well, you know
But
what, Caswell, we hope that it happens. We hope that it happens. I'm going to have to break this discussion. This was our pre-discussion as we are, a pre-show. Kind of, we're waiting on Honorable Sam Nartey George from Ghana, and he's right here with us in the green room. And let me just give you let me just introduce this gentleman that we've been passing around his videos all about. I've gotten them. I don't know how many times people have they've put it up. They've just been sending his stuff all about throughout the region. And so the Caribbean welcomes tonight Mr. Sam Nartey George. He was the assistant director at the Office of the Head of Civil Service from 2010 to 2014, and a communication specialist at the Office of the President from 2014 to 2016. In 2021, together with other members of parliament, he proposed a law criminalizing homosexuality and many forms of LGBTI support and activism. He was born the January 22nd, 1985. He's a Ghanaian politician. He's a member of the National Democratic Congress. In 2015, he defeated the incumbent E.T. Mensah to represent the party in the 2016 parliamentary elections of Mingo Prampam constituency. I hope I've done justice to those places. Sam George is currently a member of both the Public Accounts Committee and the Communications Committee. And we say from Jamaica, Barbados, St. Vincent, Trinidad, everybody's watching. And we join in. And as Camille Allen from Barbados is saying, greetings, Honorable Sam Nartey George. It's an honor to have you here. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Greetings to you from the motherland, from Accra, Ghana. It's a pleasure to join you, our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean.
Yes, sir. It's really an honor to have you here. When we say have you here, like you're here physically, you're visiting us virtually. Have you ever been to the Caribbean region, sir?
Yes, I've been to Bahamas twice.
You've been to Bahamas twice. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, everybody on here is going to tell you to make sure you come to their country. We have people watching from Trinidad and, of course, Barbados, because the show is located in Barbados. And people are on from Jamaica and St. Vincent and the Grenadines and various Caribbean countries. Everybody's going to come and want to tell you come to their beautiful country. And so next time you come, make sure you visit somewhere else.
I hear you. There was a trip planned to Ocho Rios with a few friends. It will happen in the shortest possible time, and maybe we'll use the opportunity to see the other part of the Caribbean. It's a beautiful place.
Yes, wonderful. Let me just introduce you to Mr. Caswell Franklyn. He's, as I said, he's based here in Barbados. The show is based in Barbados, and he is one of our leading trade unionists here in Barbados from the Unity Workers Union. And beside him, right there, is Miss Maxine McLean, and she's a former Minister of Foreign Affairs. So she's been following your videos, and we are excited to have you here, sir. Now,
Thank
we've
you.
received several questions, Honorable George, from various persons within the Caribbean region. But the first question we want to ask you is if you can explain to us the climate in Ghana, before this new legislation was passed. Why was it necessary for this new legislation that some believe that, and when it comes on to the LGBTQ community, that is very harsh? Why was it necessary, sir?
All right, thank you very much. Ghana's always dealt and lived as a very hospitable nation. In fact, one of the biggest things Ghana sells is our hospitality.
Yeah.
We've got quite a number of diasporans who've returned to Accra. In my constituency in Ingo Pram, I've got a huge Jamaican community of Jamaicans who've come back to the motherland, who have relocated, have been given Ghanaian citizenship. We're big on welcoming people from all parts of the world. However, our culture is a very big part of our identity, and we believe that our culture must be respected by everyone who comes into our country. I mean, I can't visit your house and say that um, in your house everybody drinks water naturally through their mouth, and say that in my house where I come from we drink water through our ears. And so, as my host, you must stop drinking water through your mouth. You must start drinking water through your ears. That's unacceptable. And so Ghana's always had legislation that criminalizes unnatural canal knowledge. Ghana gained independence as the first Black African country in sub-Saharan Africa in 1957. In
Mhm.
1960, we passed the Criminal Offences Act, Act 29 of 1960, and Section 104 of that act clearly states that unnatural canal knowledge is prohibited. It criminalizes unnatural canal knowledge. Now, it's been on our statute books for a while, and since 1960. In 2014, the Supreme Court of Ghana distinguished that act when it went before the Supreme Court for interpretation. The Supreme Court defined natural canal knowledge in a landmark case called Banusin versus the Republic. Now, in that case, the Supreme Court stated what natural canal sex was and described it as natural intercourse between a male and a female
Mhm.
that had the slightest level or a certain level of penetration of the female sexual organ by the male sexual organ. It then meant that anything other than that was unnatural canal knowledge. Now, we've lived peacefully and quietly with people because nobody cares what you do in the privacy of your bedroom. Nobody's going to come into your bedroom to see what's going on in your bedroom.
Okay.
And then COVID struck. And
Mhm.
when COVID struck in 2019, 2020, we had the lockdown in 2020. I spent a lot more time at home with my kids. I've got very young kids.
Mhm.
And I got worried and concerned by the content of the cartoons they were watching. Because the
Okay.
very cartoons I watched as a kid, Superman, Spider-Man, SpongeBob, all now had LGBTQ themes in there. And that left me very worried what my kids were watching. And then in January 2021, after we came out of lockdown in Ghana, we saw the opening of what they called an advocacy office. Um, and in attendance at that program and was funded, that advocacy office was funded, and there was an attendance by the EU rep to Ghana, the Australian High Commissioner at the time to Ghana, and the Danish ambassador to Ghana at the time. Now, This was in January 2021. So in February 2021, as soon as Parliament reconvened from our Christmas break, I made a statement on the floor of the House, calling on state security to immediately shut down that office, and indicated that I was going to bring a tighter legislation to deal with homosexuality and the advocacy of it, because this office was supposed to be an advocacy office. And so we're going to deal with advocacy. It took us about 7 months to put the bill together. And in August 2021, we presented the bill to Parliament. The bill has looked at all forms and shades of the alphabet folks, as I like to call them. They're trying to steal the alphabet from kindergarten kids. It deals with all representations of homosexuality, but deals very strongly with advocacy. And if you read the bill that Parliament passed about 2 weeks ago, punishment for homosexuality itself is a fine or a jail sentence that ranges from 2 months to a maximum of 3 years, or both. But the punishment for advocacy is, it doesn't have a fine. It's straight incarceration, 5 years minimum, maximum 10 years. So you can clearly see that the focus of the bill is to deal with advocacy, because it's with advocacy that they subconsciously indoctrinate the children. It's with advocacy that people then begin to spread the mental malaise and mental illness that homosexuality is. And so we're really looking at that and trying to clamp down on that. So basically, that's the background to the legislation here in Ghana. The Criminal Offences Act still stands, Section 104. But what we've done with this bill is to now take care of things like transgender, like lesbianism, because if you look at the interpretation that the Supreme Court gave in Banusin versus the Republic, it was impossible then to prosecute lesbians, for example, because it spoke about penetration of the male organ and the female organ. And so you couldn't deal, and that's because the 1960 legislation was focused on gayism, which was the known form or expression of homosexuality at the time. Today, we're speaking of over 96 different expressions of homosexuality. And so we've tried to make the law woke. Let me put it that way. Since they're trying to be woke and push a woke agenda, we've passed a woke law to deal with the woke madness.
Wow, very, very, very bold, I tell you, sir. Now, there's a question here from someone in Jamaica, and they're asking, they say, some say that same-sex or homosexual attraction may be involuntary, but behavior is voluntary. How would you respond to the argument that the bill should not punish what is outside of a person's control, their feelings, rather than what is under their control, their behavior?
Well, if we were not to criminalize feelings, then society is going to become chaotic. Society is going to become literally a jungle, because people feel broke and have to deal with it. So if someone were to rob a bank because they felt broke, would we say that we're not going to criminalize their action because it's a feeling? If I woke up tomorrow, and this is a question I asked the people from the American embassy in Ghana who reached out to me, and the British embassy, I said to them, if I woke up tomorrow and said I felt American, would they give me access to the United States without a visa? Would I get the benefits of an American citizen simply because I felt like that? We cannot give people rights on the basis of their feelings. Then pedophiles also feel that way, and already they're beginning to make a claim for it and say that they are not pedophiles. We should call them minor attracted persons. Then people feel that they should have sexual intercourse with their own blood sisters or their mothers, and that should not be called incest. We should allow it. So you cannot get rights. You see, rights must be justiciable. It's one of the basic principles in law that for you to demand the right, your right must be justiciable. And for something to be justiciable, you need to be able to define it. And you need to be able to explain that something that's justiciable is objective and not subjective. So how one person feels is a subjective, is not an objective test, it's a subjective test. and anything that's subjective and not objective cannot be justiciable. And so your feelings are subjective because your feelings are only related to you, and then you cannot get a right that is justiciable on the basis of what you feel. You understand me? And so that's why you can't separate the behavior from the act. Again, let's be very clear on one thing. Um, when people say they feel one way or the other, um, look, let's call a spade a spade. As kids, we all as a boy growing up, I played with my mom's clothing. I mean, I wore my mom's high heel shoes. I put her wig on my hair. It didn't make me want to become transgender. My parents didn't look at me and say, "Oh, he's a girl trapped in a boy's body." No, that was me as a kid exploring. The girls who tried to wear their father's shoes or see if they could fit in a trouser didn't make them a boy. Today, we're taking away the innocence of children and not allowing them to be children, and destroying these children all on the basis of claiming that they are kids who are trapped, boys trapped in girl skin or girls trapped in boy skins, and destroying these children. And 30 years on in the United States, you can see the effect it's having on people who've gone through this irreversible hormonal treatments and surgeries that have made them transgenders. And so, look, I keep saying that what you do in the privacy of your bedroom is not my business. But once you take your personal idiosyncrasies and personal sexual preferences and seek to make them the object of public advocacy, then prepare for public legislation to deal with your public advocacy. And that's what's happening here in Ghana. So my response with the legislation is to public advocacy of what should be people's private business. Keep it in
Yeah.
your bedroom. Don't try to indoctrinate my child. And I keep saying this, that if you take every legislation, and I've heard people say that the legislation I've sponsored is an affront to international law, and I've
Mm.
constantly challenged them from CNN to BBC to whichever platform has interviewed me. I've challenged them to show me which legislation. I say to them that they think the black man doesn't read, but this black man here, this brother here does read. Because the question is very simple. Show me which international legislation gives rights on the basis of sexual preference. None.
Mm.
Absolutely none. And I say to them that in Ghana, for example, and again, laws are jurisdictional. So you cannot look at what happens in Jamaica or what happens in Bahamas and try to use that to pass legislation in Ghana, because even though we may be very similar, we're very different as well. We have our unique jurisdictional identities. If you take Ghana's 1992 constitution, which is the supreme law of Ghana's land, of the land here in Ghana, it says that it gives a lot of rights to
Mhm.
citizens. However, it doesn't give them rights on the basis of sexual preference, and even the right to life. The Constitution says that Parliament may pass legislation that would curtail your right to life or any other right you enjoy in the Constitution on the basis of three grounds: public health, public safety, and most importantly, public morality.
Mm.
This is in Ghana's Constitution. Public morality. And so it's important that we realize that LGBTQ is an affront to public morality. It's an affront to public health. When you look at the health consequences of homosexuality, because you look at the CDC, and the CDC is clear that if you take homosexual people, they're 400% more likely to contract HIV/AIDS. That's a health
Mhm.
scare. That's a
Mhm.
bill on the public purse. If you take
Mhm.
homosexuality, they're 40 times more suicidal than straight men. They're 40 times more likely to abuse substance than straight men. That in itself is a public health crisis. So if we pass legislation curtailing rights, even if they were to exist, we will be doing so on solid grounds. Again, when you take the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, it states clearly, I think in Article 18 or so of the African Charter on Human Rights, that the family is the base unit and the state must take the appropriate steps to protect the family from any assault, and that the family has the sole right to determine
Mhm.
how the child of that family is educated. Sole right belongs to the family, not an educational board, not a government
Mhm.
ministry, not a president, the family. It's my child. it's my responsibility to bring that child, and not an educational board. You don't choose how to train and bring up my child. Absolutely not. So that's basically what this is.
Wow. Whew. This is straight talk. We're getting straight talk here tonight, and I can tell you, I could see where your law degree, is coming into full effect and working in this season. This is so important. Now we have a question from Trinidad. As I said, this we have a Caribbean issue. This is a real challenge where we're seeing our leaders are being almost they're under pressure. Honorable George, it's like they're under pressure to bow and to bend and to change our family, our family structure, etc. Now Trinidad is asking, the question says many of us are here in the Caribbean due to slavery. As you know, money played a major role in the evil of slavery. Do you think this is happening with the LGBTQ issue in Africa? And if so, how can you effectively respond to that challenge?
Well, absolutely. Money's playing a big role. Money's at the base of everything that's been done here. I mean, um, since 2021, when I brought this legislation, there have been several offers that have been made to get me to drop the bill, both from forces within Ghana and forces outside of Ghana. First, they've used coercion, then they've used threats, then they've used bribery. It's not going to work because, like I said, if you don't stand for something, you fall for everything. And for me, this battle that I've engaged in is not, it's about two things. It's about the innocence of Ghanaian children, which we want to protect, and then it's about fighting for our cultural identity. We are not going to lose that because the West has lost its identity. Their societies have collapsed because they've destroyed the family unit, and we're not going to import the problems and sicknesses of the West into Africa. However, the truth must be said that you have a lot of corrupt leadership here in Africa. And I'm sure it's a similar thing in the Caribbean. Corrupt leadership that's up for the highest bidder. They've lost their morals. They've lost their values. Many of them have corrupted themselves so badly that they're even being blackmailed into supporting this. I remember that sometime last year, Kamala Harris actually visited Ghana just because of this bill whilst it was in Parliament, and when she met with the president, there was a staged question by an American journalist to her
Mhm.
about the bill, and she stated that she was concerned about the bill and asked the president. And as usual, because the current president of Ghana, with the greatest of respect, is a big disappointment to the Ghanaian people and has sold out to the LGBTQ cabal, he literally ran away from the bill and said, I don't know anything about the bill. It's a private member of parliament who is sponsoring that bill, and so we'll see where it gets. They never thought we'll be able to get the bill through parliament because they try to use the executive power to whip their members not to get the bill to pass through parliament. But we caught them by surprise and passed it unanimously in parliament without the executive having a wind of it on the 28th of February. Now, after we've passed the bill, our constitution says after we've passed the bill, the president must assent to it. Um, then on the 4th of March, the president meets the diplomatic corps and makes a promise to the diplomatic corps that he's not going to sign the bill because there is a case in court. There was no
Mm.
case in court, but the president said there was a case in court, in the Supreme Court, challenging Parliament's ability to pass a legislation. Boom. This was on the evening of the 4th of March. Boom, 5th of March at 1 p.m. A lawyer who works in the law firm of a friend of the president goes to court to file a case against the bill. So clearly, you could see how this was orchestrated. But again, I've made the point most forcefully in Ghana that the president must go ahead and sign this bill because there have been other instances where Parliament has passed legislation and it's been challenged in the Supreme Court, and the president has said he is exercising his constitutional mandate as president to assent to bills. So he would go ahead and assent to the bill. And if the Supreme Court decides subsequently that the bill was wrong, then the bill can be thrown out by the law can be thrown out by the Supreme Court. So I wonder why now he's changing his standard and saying, I'm going to wait. But this is not the first time they've gone to court. They went to court last year, and there was a 9-member panel led by the Chief Justice herself, and we won that case 9-0. against the LGBTQ cabal. And so we're confident that this time again we will win, even though they've just gone to court. There is enough pressure on the president that's coming from the traditional authorities, the chiefs, the National House of Chiefs, the Christian movement, the Islamic movement, the traditionalists in Ghana. Everybody is asking the president to sign. In fact, there is the biggest think tank that is doing advocacy for LGBTQ, which is a right-wing think tank in Ghana. It's called the CDD Ghana. They did a public survey trying to see what the position of Ghanaians were, and Ghanaians were 97% hospitable and acceptable to foreigners coming into Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
Ghanaians were 91% hospitable to persons of different ethnicity, different religion, and different political persuasion. 91% tolerance levels. When it came to homosexuality, the tolerance level of Ghanaians was only 7%.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you
Mm-hmm.
that we're a very tolerant country, but when it comes to LGBTQ, tolerance is only 7%. We don't
Yeah.
you're not welcome in Ghana. If you're coming to Ghana for any of the things to taste our good food, our spicy, lovely delicacies, you're welcome. But if you're coming to see the slave castles, you're welcome. If you're coming to enjoy the hospitality of Ghana, you're welcome. But if you're coming to Ghana because of LGBTQ, you're not welcome. And I made that case straight to Kamala Harris when the president failed to tell her to her face. I held a press conference and told her she wasn't welcome in Ghana. We're asking her to leave our country. Ghana is not the 51st state of the United States. We are a sovereign, independent nation. And I told Kamala Harris that if anybody wanted to take a lesson on human rights, the United States is the last place we'll go to, because the United States is the biggest abuser of human rights in the world. And if there was anybody who needed help, because she said she was ready to offer help, I am also ready to offer legislative help to the Capitol, the US Senate, to help them pass strict gun legislation to protect American children from being slaughtered in classrooms. They need help. We don't need help.
Wow. Mr. Sam, Honorable Sam Nartey George here from Ghana. There's a question here from Trinidad as well. And it says, since there is a strong evangelical movement in Ghana, what are the church leaders and prophets saying and doing on the issue of the LGBTQ? I know you touched on it a bit a while ago, but the person is asking, do you think they're doing what needs to be done? And we're asking that because somehow in the Caribbean, we feel like the church seems to be becoming afraid and not wanting to speak out and so on. What's happening on the ground there in Ghana?
So the church is very big. You've got Ghana having 72% of our population being Christian. And so you've got a huge Christian population. You've got very powerful what you call Orthodox, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, the Baptists,
Mm-hmm.
the Catholics, and then you've got a huge charismatic movement, what maybe you call the evangelical movement.
Yes.
We call them the charismatics here. I'm a charismatic myself, and we do have a lot of pastors um, coming under the umbrella bodies. So they've got umbrella bodies like the GPCC. The GPCC is the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council. The GPCC's membership makes up 25% of Ghana's population. So that's a very powerful group. You've got the Catholic Bishops' Conference as well, which makes up about another 15% of Ghana's population. So between the GPCC and the Catholic Bishops' Conference, you have about 40% of the population in just those two groups. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we've had those groups endorse this bill. In fact, on the day when I presented the bill to the Speaker of Parliament, I had the leadership of all of these ecumenical bodies accompany me in Parliament to do the presentation.
Wow.
It was a show of strength. It was a show of force. I had the national chief imam, who is the spiritual leader of Muslims in Ghana, and we have 15% of Muslims, and he sent a representative to follow us to do the filing as well. But if you ask me in all honesty, do I think there's a lot more the church can do? Certainly. There's a lot more the church can do, because I'm a member of the church. I mean, I grew up in the church, and the church taught me several things. This fight is not supposed to be my fight, it's supposed to be the fight of the church.
Mm-hmm.
But I sit in parliament and I've taken a legislation. They pray for me, they support me and my colleagues, but you expect them to speak more forcefully. And it is obvious. I know for a fact the American ambassador to Ghana, Virginia Palmer, who's a very big gay lobbyist, because I followed her work in Malawi all the way to when she was kicked out of Malawi because the church in Malawi rose up against her, and then she was then moved into Ghana, and she's basically visiting all those men of God in their homes and trying to lobby them to soften their stance or stand down on in their support for the bill. She and the British High Commissioner are doing that. I know the EU Commissioner is doing same. And the thing is, at times, some of the men of God look at the fact that they've got branches in Western countries of their churches, because you've got a number of these Ghanaian churches having branches in the US and in Europe, and they begin to think about the bottom line, which is the dollar. But I believe that ultimately they need to know that this is about their faith and salvation. It's not negotiable. Like I keep saying, the innocence of Ghanaian children cannot be bought. For all the jewels on the crown of the British monarch, you can't buy the innocence with all of that. I wouldn't sell it to you. And so, yes, there are a few of them who stood up and said to the ambassadors, "To hell with you." I can readily mention the head of the Assemblies of God Church, the general superintendent of the Assemblies of God Church, Reverend Steve Wengham, who's blatantly said to them, I'm not going to back down today. I'm not going to back down tomorrow, because we support Sam George and believe in what he's doing. The head of the largest the largest Pentecostal church, the Church of Pentecost in Ghana, which is huge. The Church of Pentecost is huge. The Church of Pentecost has almost 5 million members. They've made it clear to the president that they will not support homosexuality. They've made it clear to the foreign missions as well. The Catholic Bishops' Conference last week issued a statement telling the president that if he refused to assent to the bill, we have elections in December this year, they will campaign against him. They made it clear to him they will campaign against him. And the Catholic Church has 5 million members as well. And so they've made it clear to the president that they will campaign against him and his party. There are few of them who are not able to come out strongly, but we've got a few good men who are still standing for God and for what is right.
Wow. This is tremendous. I mean, I could just imagine what you felt being in Parliament, presenting this bill, and with all of these representatives there to support you. That must have been, very, very powerful. From Barbados, there's a question. The question is, why do some, and do you yourself, consider the LGBTQ movement a sinister neo-colonial plot? If you do, how can you break this down so that the average man and woman understands its danger for Black people?
All right, you just need to understand what it is that this LGBTQ movement is. Until 1976, LGBTQ or homosexuality was considered a mental illness in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It was treated the same way as schizophrenia. And if you took the DSM, the Diagnostic and Scientific Manual, that was used to train medical doctors in the United States up till 1976, homosexuality was considered a mental illness. Now, when they decided to declassify it as a mental illness, it wasn't based on scientific research. It was based on an opinion poll of 6,000 Americans. 6,000 Americans. I mean, really, that's what they used to declassify homosexuality as a mental illness. And for me, it was purely political. It was a political campaign that had been waged. And if you look at what they've targeted certain demographics. And if you look at the United States, for example, within the African American community, homosexuality is quite prevalent and quite huge there. And it's a systematic thing. If you looked at the US in 1894, the growth rate, population growth rate in Black American families was 9.2. 9.2, meaning for every Black American family, they had about 9 children. And the growth rate in white American families was 2.1, meaning they had literally just 2 children.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they've done, if you fast forward to the African American family, the Black American family in 2024, what the growth rate is 1.9, which means that the average African American family is having less than 2 kids. Now, once your population growth rate for any demographic drops below 2, that demographic is dying. Because
Mm.
when you have 2 children, it means a man and a woman have had 2 kids. And so you just, 2 is basically sustaining the population size. That is giving the possibility that none of those children die. So what they've done is, and if you look at Africa, and I'm sure they're doing the same thing in the Caribbean, they have this population caucus movements that are telling you to watch your population growth rate. And if you look at all what they're saying to you, they're always giving you the standard population growth rate at less than 2. It's always around 1.5, 1.8, because they want your population sizes controlled. Now, how did they do that with the Black American community? It was with the privatization of the penitentiary system that put money in the hands of private people for the number of people they had in their jails. Now, how did they get more people in jail? It's by messing up the justice system and jailing more people, sending more people to jail. So money is at the bottom of all of this. And so you then realize that, and I'm sure you've seen this complaint in America, that a crime a white man does and gets a fine or gets a short sentence, a Black man does it and gets life or gets a very long sentence. The 2 different justice systems in the US. So what they then did was to begin to pick a lot of young Black Africans or African Americans and incarcerate them between the ages of 15 to 25 and give them long sentences. So they give them sentences of between 20 to 40 years. Now, these young men get incarcerated at the peak of their sex drive. How do they deal with this? They have to turn to homosexuality in prisons. Now you have all of these young men locked up between 15 and 25 for 15, 20, 30 years. They come out of jail after 40, where their sex drive is declining, but they've spent all of their active sex lives being gay, engaged in sodomy. And so they don't have an appreciation of what family life is. They don't have an appreciation of procreation the natural way. Now, that's what they've done to control the Black population in the West. And now you realize that countries like Canada have actually they're facing depopulation. And so now Canada is offering visas like confetti on the African continent. For Ghana, for example, I mean, for the past 30 years, the Canadian embassy has not given up to 1 million visas. However, this year alone, they are giving, between 2022 and 2025, they intend to give 1.5 million visas.
Mhm.
So that tells you what's going on. They need the human resource, and they're targeting skilled labor because they don't have it. So Europe is in a population decline, maybe with the exception of Italy and countries like Hungary, but Central Europe is actually in a population decline. So now what they're doing is targeting Africa and trying to control the population using all of this. Now, why we call it cultural imperialism is that you're trying to change the culture of a people. And they're using the poverty of Africa. And it's a sad situation because Africa is the richest continent, but it's the poorest at the same time, because we're so rich in natural resource, but we've got so corrupt leadership that our corrupt leadership has left us so broke, we need to depend on the IMF and the World Bank and on hand-me-downs. And the system is so rigged to make us remain impoverished that unless you have radical thinking, you can't break out of the cycle of poverty.
Mhm.
Because, for example, between Ghana, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire, we
Yeah.
produce 75% of the world's cocoa beans. Switzerland is the biggest producer of chocolate. They don't have one cocoa tree in Switzerland. Now, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Nigeria are not allowed to trade our cocoa bean on the Ghanaian stock exchange or the Nigerian stock exchange or the Ivorian stock exchange. You can only trade Ghana's cocoa bean and cocoa powder on the London Stock Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange. Ask me why. To keep us poor. And Ghana is not allowed to trade the powder. We're only allowed to trade the bean. Now, let me just do the mathematics for you here. There are companies in America and Europe that buy the bean on the stock exchange and then trade the powder. Now, 1 ton of cocoa bean will give you 2.5 tons of cocoa powder. However, the cost of 1 ton, for example, if a ton of cocoa bean is going for $6,400 now on the London Stock Exchange, $6,400, a ton of cocoa powder is going for $25,000. So as a country, as a Black African country who own and farm the cocoa, we're only allowed to trade the bean at $6,400 per ton. They buy it, they mill it at a cost of about $4,000 per ton to mill it, brings it to about $10,400. But when they mill that $10,400, they get 2.5 tons, which they then sell at $25,000 per ton. So they buy at $6,400, spend $4,000 to mill, and make about over $50,000, about almost $62,500. So you keep Ghanaian farmers poor, and keep European and American middle very rich. They've rigged the system. If you say you're not going to sell to them, they're gonna have sanctions against you. They're gonna come after you with all of that. It is sick that a country that doesn't have one cocoa tree, not Belgium, not Holland, not Switzerland, these are the 3 biggest producers of chocolate. And we sell the bean, and then we import chocolate from these countries. It just doesn't make sense. And so tell me if this is not economic slavery. If this is not, if you tell me that you're going to withdraw the aid that Ghana now needs from the IMF because of poor management and because of corruption, that we've entered into an IMF program, you say you're going to withdraw that if I don't accept sodomy and the sale of Ghanaian children's innocence. Tell me how that's not cultural imperialism. Because the same United States of America goes to Qatar and does business with Qatar. They trade with Qatar. They trade with Saudi Arabia. And in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, because they have the money, you respect their culture, you respect their laws, you respect their traditions. The American football national team went to play the World Cup in Qatar and respected the Qatari law. Qatar punishes homosexuality by death. In fact, Qatar spent $22 billion in building infrastructure for the World Cup. 18 billion out of the 22 billion went to American and European companies who were contractors who worked there. So they like the money of the guys who kill people for being gay because they get the money from there. Qatar buys $1 billion worth of military hardware every year from the American economy, and so they do business with them. Saudi Arabia is constantly buying F-16s from the U.S. defense contractors. So it's good business. They turn a blind eye to that. When Kamala Harris visits any of those countries, she covers her hair. She wears a hijab to cover her hair. She respects their culture. But then she comes to Ghana and thinks that she can talk down on us. I don't blame her. I blame my corrupt leaders.
Yeah. Wow. This is some education tonight. So this is very, very, very rich. Our Miss Maxine McLean, our former Minister of Foreign Affairs, she has a question for you. Can you go ahead, Miss McLean?
Sure. Thanks, and let me welcome you to the show. Actually, I have 2 because I just want to confirm you are an opposition MP, are you?
Yes,
or are
currently
you because I was
in opposition.
yeah. How did you manage to get the legislation through? Because that is quite a feat, at least when I look at our political system. So that's the first question. If you could explain how that worked, because I was thinking, well, our particular situation is not typical because there's only one no official member of parliament on the opposition side. But traditionally, even with more members of the opposition, how did you get that to happen? Because I was intrigued as I listened to you.
All right, so it's a mixture of a few things. I believe that God has ordered our steps with this. because we've got a speaker. For the first time in Ghana's parliament, we, as the opposition, we put up a speaker candidate at the beginning of this parliament in 2021. Even though we're in the opposition, we actually won that election. And so we had the Speaker of Parliament being a member of the opposition, even though once he becomes Speaker, he's not an elected member of Parliament.
Okay.
So he doesn't have to be partisan. And we've had our fights with him. We think that we elected him, and there are many times he takes a stance against us. But on this particular bill, the Speaker has made a point that he is Catholic and he supports the bill. Now, we have decided to use what I will call soft diplomacy. The gay lobby calls it blackmail and intimidation. Different strokes for different folks. What I've basically done is, for example, when the bill was at committee level, the chairman of the Committee on Constitutional, Parliamentary and Legal Affairs is a member of the government side. And he frustrated the bill for a whole year. I mean, on clear instructions not to get the bill to go through. And so what I did was to reach out to the churches in his community, in his constituency. I reached out to the churches in his constituency and said, this is what your member of parliament is doing. He's using his office to block this bill. Is that what you really want? And so when we went on recess in 2022, the MP, as we all do, visited churches to say hi to his constituents. And he called me up after the first Sunday and said, what in God's name are you doing in my constituency? And I said, sorry, what are you talking about? And he said, well, I visited 4 churches, and the introduction in all those 4 churches was, here is our MP, the guy who is fighting the bill against homosexuality, the guy who is supporting homosexuality, and the guy who is fighting Sam George in the church, in Parliament. And the whole church started hooting at him. It happened to him in 4 churches on one Sunday. And then he immediately called me and said, when is the next meeting? We want to have a meeting with you. We need to move this bill. Because then he realized that there was political consequence for him. And that's what we did to all the government MPs. Basically, we said to them, the vote on this is not going to be secret. It's open. And we got the media to carry it live. And the speaker will call you and your constituency, the whole country is watching, and ask you how you vote. Because, I mean, they have sponsored, the gay lobby have sponsored people to contest me in my primaries. Thankfully, I won that election because the church rallied behind me. I won that election. But if they could do that, it's also fair game for us to also rally our numbers against any member of parliament who chooses to stand against the bill. And so on this one, we've used soft diplomacy. They call it blackmail, but we've used soft diplomacy.
Wow. That's amazing. Miss McLean, you have another question?
Yes, the other one has to do with the actual legislation, because I noted you made on more than one occasion the comment that you have no interest in people's private activities or whatever. And I think that there's also a distinction between the penalties imposed for what you call public advocacy. Now, the question I have is, how do you, under what conditions does an individual find himself or herself charged in relation to what I would describe as the private element of it? In other words, one element of the legislation, to my mind, criminalizes what I would describe the promotion of the LGBT agenda. And then there's the other component, and I'm trying to understand how that other component is affected. So in other words, how does an individual find himself or herself, charged under the legislation?
All right, so what I'm going to do is just read the legislation to you so that you get the wording of it, that the sections of the legislation that deal with criminalization. So Section 4 of the bill is titled Prohibition of LGBTQAP+ and Related Activities. Now we say 4.1 says, a person commits an offense if the person A engages in I, sexual intercourse with a person of the same sex. II, sexual intercourse with an animal, or III, pansexual activity. And we've defined pansexual activity in the interpretation section of the bill. Basically, pansexual activity has to do with those who choose to marry vehicles and stones and all kinds of inanimate objects. Now, a person commits an offense if the person B marries or purports to marry a person of the same sex as that person. A person commits an offense if the person C knowingly marries or purports to marry a person who has undergone gender or sex reassignment, except in the case of a person who has undergone a surgical procedure to correct a biological abnormality, including intersex. So here, if you look at the when I mentioned the alphabets, we left I out because intersex is basically hermaphrodites. This person is born with both genitalia, and that's a biological abnormality. You cannot criminalize people for that. Now, a person also commits an offense if the person marries or purports to marry an animal or object. And then a person commits an offense if they hold out as a lesbian, a gay, a transgender, a transsexual, a queer, a pansexual, an ally. So even if you're straight and make yourself an ally and begin to advocate for those activities, the law deals with you. Holds out as a non-binary or any other sexual or gender identity that is contrary to the binary categories of male or female. Now, we also say a person commits, now this is the penalty, a person who commits an offense under paragraphs A, B, C, D, E, F, or G of subsection 1 commits a misdemeanor and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not less than 750 penalty units. Now, 750 penalty units comes to about 3,000 Ghana cedis. 3,000 Ghana cedis at today's exchange rate is just around $260. And not more than 5,000 penalty units. Now, 5,000 penalty units goes up to about 75,000 Ghana cedis. Now, 75,000 Ghana cedis is about $3,000. So it's a range. And the judge is going to look at the specifics of the case. It's going to look at repeat offenders, for example, and then that imposes a more severe punishment, or a term of imprisonment of not less than 2 months and not more than 3 years, or to both. So we give the judges a wide spectrum to allow them choose what kind of punishment they want to give for the activism. And now, again, you need to bear in mind that for you to be found guilty, the prosecution has to establish a prima facie case against you. They have to be able to show evidence. It can't just be on allegation, because there needs to be evidence of it. Because we try to set the bar high so that it doesn't look as though I don't like you, I make an allegation against you and claim that you were involved in it, and then you just got thrown into jail. No. We're still trying to make sure that people get a fair trial, because that's one thing that this bill, and that's one thing I'm very proud about, that this bill is very balanced and tries to look at both sides of the coin and ensure that people have their rights. Now, when it comes to advocacy, which, like I said, is the real intent of the bill. And the thing is, you can't criminalize advocacy without criminalizing the activity that is being advocated for. But the real intent of the act is advocacy. So when you come to section 10, we call that prohibition of propaganda of, promotion of, and advocacy for activities prohibited under this act. Here we say that if you use a medium, that's any media platform, technological platform, so whether it's Facebook, whether it's Zoom, whatever technological platform you use, you commit an offense, and you are liable on summary conviction to a term of imprisonment of not less than 5 years and not more than 10 years. There is no option of a fine here. And in this one, it's easier to prove in court, because once you do advocacy, there is evidence of it. Because advocacy is most times on radio, or even if it was in a public or a setting face to face, someone will have a recording of you doing the advocacy. And once we get you doing advocacy, you're locked in. In fact, in 11, we bring in prohibition of propaganda of, promotion of, and advocacy for activities directed at a child. So 10 is general. 11 is specific to children. And in that case, The lowest punishment is 6 years, and maximum is 10 years, because again, we need to make the advocacy aimed at children, because we've seen them go into secondary schools and even as low as primary schools to try and tell children that you can love yourselves. In fact, we had to fight the introduction of comprehensive sexuality education into the Ghanaian curriculum. They tried to bring it using UNICEF and
Wow.
and UNESCO, and it was a huge fight. In fact, the government of Ghana had already gone to take 25 million euros for that. We told them you have to vomit that money because we're not going to accept it, and we kicked it out of our school system. And so that's what's in the bill. But there is a fantastic part of our bill that many people don't know, and the gay community don't like to talk about. It's section 17. Now, I was very awake to the fact that we had extrajudicial treatment of persons on the allegation of being involved in homosexuality, where you see that people are lynched, people are beating up. It's unacceptable. And that's not something we're going to accept. As a lawmaker, I hold the view that even criminals, even armed robbers, have a right to a fair trial in a competent court of jurisdiction. You can't just lynch people. Then there is no difference between us and animals. And so in section 17, we introduce what we call the duty to report and prohibition of extrajudicial treatment. Now it says, a person who has knowledge that an offense is committed under this act shall report the commission of the offense to a police officer, or in the absence of a police officer, to a relevant authority of the community in which the offense is committed. Again, in the interpretation section, we've defined relevant authority to include traditional authority, religious authority, political authority. Then 2, a relevant authority to whom a report is made under subsection 1 shall within 3 days of the report ensure that the report is lodged at the nearest police station. Then 3, and this is where for me it's critical. This is what I think makes our law very unique. Sections 84 to 87 of the Criminal Offences Act 1960 shall apply to a person who commits a misdemeanor if that person verbally or physically abuses, assaults, or harasses a person accused of an offense under this act. So if you decide to exact jungle justice and start lynching people, even if they were involved in homosexuality, you who carries out the lynching would also go to jail for between 6 months to 3 years.
Okay.
Because we want to ensure that even if the person is engaged in homosexuality, let them have their day in court. Let the law deal with them. So I keep saying to the LGBTQ community, this is the first time they have a legislation that ensures that people will not lynch them, because people know there is a price for doing that. So we try to balance this out. In fact, in the original bill, we actually introduced medical care, but we had to take it out because it's a private member's bill. And in Ghana's constitution, it says that a private member's bill cannot be introduced if it has financial consideration. If there's a financial cost element, it can't be a private member's bill. And so I had to drop that, else the bill would have failed. But that is and so what we're doing now is working with the churches. I said to the churches, you don't need legislation because you're already doing it. Last year, we helped 56 people who reached out to us and said, we are struggling with homosexuality, we need help. And some of it is just medical. Some of it is endocrinological imbalances. There are men who have higher estrogen levels than testosterone. And there are women who have higher testosterone than estrogen. And they just need to have this endocrinological balances taken care of medically. It's quite expensive, but the church in Ghana is paying for it. Last year, we treated 56 people. This year, already, we have about 8 people in treatment. And so we took that out of the law and said, so that it doesn't fail in Parliament, we can still continue to do the treatment for them quietly on the side.
Wow, that's tremendous. That is tremendous. Mr. Franklyn, who is a union leader here in Barbados, has a question for you. Go ahead, Mr. Franklyn. Professor Franklyn.
Well, before I ask my question, I just want to say to you that I am extremely happy to finally meet you. I was following you, and I was also following the people in Uganda when they had their threats thing, and I was praying that you don't cave into this imperialist nonsense. And I'm much older than you. My first child is your age, and so normally I don't have a lot of heroes that are so young, but I would consider you one of my heroes. And I took particular interest in it because when I was, even before you were born, I was a soldier training in Canada, and I trained with some guys from Guyana. I don't know. I lost track with them. Asare and Bompong. I don't know what became of them, but they were gyrologists guys, and so we had a friendship with them. So I always had an interest in Ghana, even though I've never been. So you can invite me when you choose. Um,
Please.
you know, but I'm very happy to meet you, honestly. And but my question though is, I believe that it is inconsistent with your diplomatic status for a diplomat from any country to come and oppose the cultural norms and the laws of the receiving country. And I wanted to see your views on trying to get them put out of the country. Because if you're coming here and challenging the laws, I see they do it here in Barbados, the Canadian ambassador, but we call him High Commissioner to Canada, the Canadian High Commissioner, and we want from Britain. They're trying to target our children, and our government is ignoring that behavior, even though it is not consistent with our laws. And I was wondering what your views are about having those people, or force asking the government or lobbying to have them removed from the country for um, activities that are not consistent with their status as diplomat.
All right, thank you. I mean, you're right. Article 42 of the Vienna Convention, which is the Convention on Diplomatic Relations. Article 42 is very clear. It says that the the a diplomat from from another country must respect the local laws and nuances of your receiving country, of your host country. And so it is extremely wrong for foreign diplomats to be pushing such agenda in other countries. But look, it's economic. We just need to call it as it is. You don't see the American ambassador to Saudi Arabia or the British High Commissioner or British ambassador to Saudi Arabia doing some of these things. They will expel you. It's possible to fight those fights. And I'll give you a typical example. In 2021, when I started my advocacy and started pushing this bill, the then Australian High Commissioner to Ghana um, publicly took me on. He attacked me in public. I went to the stadium to watch one of our biggest local derbies. He was there with the Lebanese ambassador and I think the Kuwaiti ambassador, who are my friends, and they were seated in the presidential stand where I was seated as well. So the gentleman that I was, even though we had had a heated argument on radio, I walked up to them and said hi, shook hands with the Lebanese and Kuwaitis who are my friends, and stretched my hand to say hi to him because I'm, irrespective of what it is, I'm still a gentleman. I consider myself to be a gentleman. And the ambassador actually hit my hands off and used the F word on me. And then I said to him, this is my country, and you insult me this way, I'm going to get you beating up in the stadium. And so I walked downstairs from the stands, and I mean, the supporters of the football club that I support, Accra Hearts of Oak, were standing around me. And then the ambassador came down again to accost me downstairs. And when he came down, everybody was looking at him because he was this white guy. And then I just raised my voice and said to them, well, this is the white guy who's saying that they should sodomize our kids. And immediately the fans just jumped on him. It had to take the military at the stadium to rescue him. Now, that was a Saturday. Monday morning, he had a petition before the Speaker of Parliament saying that I should be censured in Parliament because I had led a mob to attack him. So what I then did was also get my constituents I got about 200 of my constituents to write letters to the Australian High Commission, the Australian Foreign Mission, Foreign Ministry in Australia, and the Australian Parliament, and we chronicled a number of the things he had done. In 3 weeks, he was withdrawn. He was sent back to Australia. So it comes back to how you choose to fight. The Americans have decided that their diplomacy is going to be LGBTQ. In fact, they have an LGBTQ ambassador embedded within the Ghanaian embassy. And not just in Ghana, in several countries. They have a rep of LGBTQ rights in the embassy whose job it is to push a lot of this ideology. It is against the Vienna Convention. If you have a president who is strong, for example, Uganda has a very strong president. I mean, I may not agree with him in everything because I believe in democracy and the right for the people to choose. He's been president for over 27 years, Yoweri Museveni. But he's been strong enough to say to the diplomats, if you stay in my country, you respect the laws of my country. And you cannot be involved in the local politics of my country. Until our leaders begin to take that stand, you're going to have these diplomats running riot. And I asked Virginia Palmer, the US ambassador to Ghana, I said to her, do you think the Ghanaian ambassador to the United States could go on radio and criticize the American people for criminalizing polygamy? Would you accept that? The United States is imprisoning people for polygamy, which we practice and accept in Ghana as a cultural practice. But our ambassador to the United States respects the US law and doesn't speak about it because he respects the host country. So if you think polygamy is wrong and we think homosexuality is wrong, why don't we respect each other's views? You know, so it comes back to the leadership of the country and how firm they will be. That's really what it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I know this is getting it's 12:08
Yes,
in
it's past
Ghana right
midnight.
now. It is
I've got a very
past
early morning.
midnight, and we to ask him for 1 hour, and he's gone over by 8 minutes. I'm so conscious of that. So I just want to say to you, sir, thank you so very much for being on. I'm going to keep in touch with you via phone because, listen, we have some things we've got to deal with here in the Caribbean region, and I suspect we're going to need your help. So we want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been very educational, I must say, very educational, very, very motivational as well. Thank you. It's great to see.
Marcia, before you ask finish off his segment, I would ask him if he would be gracious enough to send us a copy of that bill or that act. No.
I will send it straight to Marsha, and I'm sure
Yes,
she'll
thank you.
okay. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm sure everybody out there thanking you to for being here tonight, and it's a big sacrifice to you. Sir, can you in just take half a minute? What do you want to say to Barbadians watching and to those in the Caribbean as it relates to this fight that we're dealing with the same thing here? What do you say to us, sir?
There is nothing more important than the innocence of your kids, and this is about the future. I've told people that whatever the cost this is to me, whether it's personal, I mean, we've had embassies turn you down visas and all of that. I can't change a single dollar anywhere in the world if I travel. I've been put on they claim I'm doing money laundering. It's all meant to just shut me up. But look, I tell my people in Ghana, I say to them, the independence of Ghana came at a huge price. It came at a huge cost. But we're proud today to be an independent state. We sparked a whole revolution on the African continent. In 1957, when Ghana gained independence, they said it wasn't going to be possible for us to run our own affairs. They said we didn't have the human resources, the manpower to man even the civil service. It came at huge cost to us, but we pulled it off. This is for our children. We need to pull this off for our children. We need to hold the family, the unit that is fundamental to life. We need to hold it. It's going to come at cost. Don't get it twisted. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be cheap. It's going to be expensive. It's cost me an arm and a leg to push this bill. It's expensive. It is tough. It is going to come at, I mean, I get hate mail from across the world. They've moved away from me. Now they're attacking my wife, attacking my children. It comes at a price, but you need to be ready to stand for something. And look, this is about who can hold their breath the longest, because they will buckle. They
Yeah.
will finally buckle. But we just need to be persevere to persevere and show perseverance. And I believe we'll pull this through. And the moment we all begin to create the synergies across the pond, from the Caribbean through Africa, I believe that we will hold something that's right, and God will come through for us. But most importantly, we need to add a lot of prayer to this, because trust me, this fight, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you're a spiritual person or not, believe me, it's not just a physical fight. It's also a very spiritual one. And so you need to be prepared for the journey both ways. It's a tough one, but it's one that is winnable. Trust me.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. And we hope you get some sleep tomorrow to make up for the hours you've lost. And we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Honorable Sam
Thank you.
Nartey George.
Take care.
God bless. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Yes, good
Bye
night.
bye. Wow. Wow. Wow.
That man is dynamic. He knows his stuff. He sounds prime ministerial, you know, not like our prime
You have
minister.
to say presidential. Presidential.
No, I'm saying prime ministerial because here we have a prime minister that cannot match him.
Okay.
Oh my Lord, that's somebody who he knows, Miss McLean, that's a leader. Whatever you think of what he's saying, that's a leader. He makes up his mind, this is what it is, and he carries it through.
Yes.
And he's using all of his training. You can see him being a lawyer coming through, and wow, and you could, as somebody said, top class, very enlightening, very enlightening. And I just want to thank those who sent in questions from Trinidad, from Barbados, and from Jamaica. Thank you all so very, very much. Please, guys, I ask you to keep sharing the show. This is very, very educational tonight. It's good to hear, what's happening in Ghana, as it relates to this topic. Now, listen, we have some heavy hitters tonight. Okay, Miss McLean and this is a different night. Come on, guys. Listen. Have you been writing your notes? Have you been writing your notes? Well, tonight we have with us as well, and I can see him in the green room, and um, and I know that very soon he's going to get his camera on and his microphone on. But we have with us Mr. Carl Greenidge. And I have been trying to get this gentleman for quite a while, and he is going to be coming to us. I can see that devices are not yet connected, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and introduce him. Probably, let me just send a message to them and to see what the issue is, because they were connected, the devices were connected before. Folks, we're getting ready to speak about Haiti. We're going to talk about Haiti and what is happening there. We're not going to forget Haiti. I know we have a lot of things that we want to discuss about what's happening in Barbados, and we're going to do that as well. All right. So when we are finished talking about Haiti, then we're going to get back to the land tax. We're going to get back to the land tax and to what's happening there abroad. We're going to get back to that and all the things that matter to us locally. But we're going to, we're going to stand in there with Haiti tonight as well. So I see they're having some challenges. Let me just send a message. But in the meantime, In the meantime, can we, Mr. Franklin, I know you were all into that presentation. What is it that he said? Is there anything in particular that you would say, Mr. Franklin, that honorable George said that stood out to you very, very, you know, that was significant to you?
There are lots of things in there, but one thing that I wrote down, when he was talking about if you want to claim that because you feel a certain way, that doesn't make you that way. And I think that's what that's the takeaway from this show. And I was even commenting. I feel I feel like a millionaire trapped in a poor man's body. So I'm gonna walk about and tell people I'm a millionaire. It doesn't work that way. Only when we have bankrupt people who don't have an intellectual basis to stand from, they start doing nonsense. So you are feeling that you are a man in a woman's body, or a woman in a man's body, and you then go allow yourself to be mutilated. That is one of the things that I picked up on. I like the way how he went into the constituencies of the government MPs and said, well, look, this is the man that represent you in Parliament that is trying to legalize homosexuality. Homosexuality is not an African thing. So people call it blackmail. They call it good politics. Because you see you need those votes, and if the people hate you, you're getting them. So that is why it was passed, because the opposition had strategy. I'm just hoping that our opposition would develop some of that strategy and work, you know, to eliminate this government from the face of the earth. And I would like to eliminate it from the history books, but that's not possible. But so that is something that he talked about, and I think we can duplicate, replicate, or whatever you feel like using something similar in Barbados. You go into their constituencies and let the people know what they are voting for. When they do, because in the house, and I think now that Ralph is there, what can happen? Ralph can call for a division, and when you call for a divide, the clerk calls your name. The clerk calls your name, and you have to vote yes or no. Now, if it is something that we find offensive, and then you say you can hide behind the fact that, oh, I didn't say yes, but when you call your name, you have to say one or the other.
Hmm.
So I think
Yeah,
that is a strategy that can be used, name and shame, and then go in constitution and say, see, this is what he voted for in your name.
yes,
So again, I like his politics. I like his strategies. He's a young man and a very clever man, and he's
yeah.
getting the job done.
It's a lot, Mr. Franklin, that we can actually take away from it. And as we go through, tomorrow night we will. I think what we could do is just sit down and break down, Mr. Franklin, what he said tonight. I think that would be very, very helpful. But we have a lot. We have royalty here on the show, and again, and so tonight we have Mr. Carl B. Greenidge. He's an academic and author and international negotiator, as well as a well-known Caribbean economist, politician, and personality. Oh, I tell you, we have royalty. He's a former vice president of Guyana and has held ministerial portfolios of foreign affairs, international trade, finance, and planning in Guyana. He has been a board member of several European institutions, such as the University of Oxford, the ECPDM Deputy Chairman, and former Secretary General of Brussels based ACP Secretariat, the CRNM, and the Netherlands based Technical Center for Agriculture and Rural Cooperation. Currently, he is Guyana's agent to the International Court of Justice in the in and the I'm sorry and he's Guyana's advisors on the board. So let me just welcome Mr. Carl B. Greenidge. Welcome, sir, to the Marcy Show.
Good evening,
My friend.
everyone, and thank you very much, Madam Chair, for that very kind and generous introduction. May I say a special word, uh, hello to Maxine, and thank you very
Sir.
much for facilitating my involvement.
Yes,
I trust
it
I
is
find,
indeed. Yes, go ahead, sir.
no, I said I was going to say, I trust I find everyone in good shape.
Yes, sir.
What, I, what
Yes,
I've seen
yes.
of the exchanges have been interesting.
Well, you know Maxine McLean, who is a former Minister of Foreign Affairs. You would have known her because of the time when your government was in power as well. But we also have Mr. Caswell Franklyn. He's a former senator and also the leader of one of the I would say the strongest union in Barbados presently, Unity Workers Union. So he is here on the show with us tonight, and one of our panelists. I need to say that properly. And
Well, it's not, I was going to say, sorry, it's a pleasure to meet Mr. Franklin. I had my I spent some time wearing another hat, interfacing with unions. I wasn't the most popular man with them, but I try to do penance these days, and I hope that I'll be accepted.
We wouldn't hold that against you if you lose.
Mr. Greenwich, we have been watching with much horror what is happening in Haiti at this moment. And a lot of people are not don't really understand the historic setting or the backdrop of what is happening. And you and I, we had a conversation on the phone, and I know that that matters to you a lot, that Caribbean people understand the historic backdrop of what is going on in Haiti at this time. Can you spend some time for us and break that down for us, Mr. Greenwich?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you very much for offering me the opportunity to do this. For Caribbean people, Haiti is a very significant country, and it's significant for two reasons. First of all, it was the first country in the Western Hemisphere to challenge and overthrow the institution of slavery that governed and dominated this entire region. And Haiti uh, had a long battle with the French and subsequently with other European powers to overthrow that system of chattel slavery and the enslavement of Africans for the advancement of capitalism. That is one side. But the other side is that Haiti and that action inspired the entire region. I'm speaking now not merely of English speakers in the Caribbean. I'm not speaking only of the Caribbean. I'm speaking of Central America and of South America. They're throwing off the yoke of slavery as well as of freedom from European domination. And that would mean that you're speaking, whether it's of Colombia, Venezuela, and the other countries in this part of the world, that Haiti's action inspired many of them to seek to have their freedom not only at the personal level, but in terms of having the countries operate free of the yoke of a colonial power. So that's the significance of Haiti. If I might add a little element to say that for Guyana, it is especially important because whereas Haiti's was the first successful and, in a sense, permanent revolution and overthrow. The process started earlier, and in 1763, there was a monument in Guyana to that in Georgetown. In 1763, the slaves of Berbice, which is that area in the easternmost part of Guyana, also rebelled and were able to overthrow the company and those institutions, the governance mechanisms of the Dutch that controlled Berbice. They did so for a little over a year, and I think for that reason we would identify ourselves as part of the seeds that were responsible for sowing the idea that freedom and freedom from slavery would be possible if the slaves worked together to do so. So that is why Haiti is particularly special in that way. I could go on to tell you that Haiti did, as did other countries, send troops and fighters from time to time to help Latin American countries overthrow their colonial masters. So it wasn't only an ideological or an inspiration by way of ideas, but by way of blood, sweat, and tears. And so for that reason, Haiti should be of special significance to us all in the Caribbean, Latin America, in this part of the Western Hemisphere, and of course to those who are of African stock. It would be of special importance because slavery saved its virulence. The system of slavery was directed specifically to Africans. Whether you were born free or not didn't matter. Whether you were free whilst you were growing up didn't matter. These systems could simply capture you and enslave you, your property, your relatives, your family. You automatically became the property of slave owning classes. And that meant, as many of us don't seem to understand, it didn't only mean that you um, were not paid for your labor, it meant that your body belonged to someone else. It meant that your body, you are a chattel. Your body belonged to your owner, whether it was for getting free labor, whether it was for sex, whether it was ending your life, which I think this is that a dimension that we in the Caribbean perhaps are too polite to even acknowledge occurred. But that was the reality, that a slave owner could and often did chop off your hand, chop off your leg, your foot, kill you, or appropriate your wife or your partner if they felt like it. So attempts to escape by any form could cause you to lose your life and cause your relatives to also find themselves punished by various forms of physical and psychological punishment. Some of them are so horrible, I don't really want to divert you now to tell you that. So this is a special reason that the region should acknowledge Haiti's contribution to its current advancement and its escape from that uh, blot on humanity. Although Haiti fought the French to free itself from slavery, as happened in the case of Berbice, the Europeans got together. In the case of Guyana or Berbice, you had the Dutch were joined by their mortal enemies, the Spanish, the French, and the British, to bring these black fellows back in order. And in the case of Haiti, that happened. The Spanish left defeated. The British came, and they left. The French came back several times. I thought that Napoleon himself, supposedly the world's greatest general, lost as many as 50,000 men at one stage in Haiti, trying to recapture Haiti. However, in um, 1795, a squadron of boats docked at Port-au-Prince, and Haiti found itself confronted by a whole set of cannons and powerful weapons. And at the end of that exercise, they succumbed to a demand that they pay millions of francs to compensate the French for the loss of slaves that the French suffered. Now, I mean, this is one of the most ridiculous things you've ever come across, because normally when you win a war, you are rewarded. In this case, you're in a war, but the world has got together in order to humiliate you and to extract from you benefits that they had not been able to win by dint of force before. So, so-called Baron Macau, who docked at Port-au-Prince in 1795, um, was able to force the Haitian president to um, agree to make payments to the French, which payments in some years amounted to as much as 40% of the government's revenues. And ironically, a number of scholars have tried to anticipate what this meant over the years. But most recently, and I was surprised to discover that the New York Times had commissioned a study to see how much had been involved in this exercise. Haiti continued to make the payments until 1888. Okay, so they were paying what is now called ransom. And after having completed the payments, they found by dint of various circumstances to pay um, for interest on loans. So the admiral turned up one day, and the government owed 150 million francs. And as time went on, francs seemed to go on in perpetuity. That's to give you an idea of why it is that Haiti finds itself in the current circumstances of being so impoverished. It is not a reflection of African incompetence. It is not a reflection of Haitian corruption. It is a reflection that Haiti found itself ganged up against by the powers who were neighbors or those who were not neighbors, remembering it's the very Haiti that had assisted some of them and had even offered to assist Napoleon and Washington in their battles for freedom. I think again we often forget this, but the story didn't end with the Europeans who were trying to reconquer Haiti, because in 1915 the Americans replaced the French. The debt had been paid off by Haiti, at least the initial principal, and they found themselves having to deal with the United States, who replaced the French as the dominant force in Haiti, and they did more than just seize Haiti's central bank. They installed a puppet government, which means that they took decisions on the financial front, they took decisions on the political front, they took decisions about economic policy. They dissolved the parliament, so there was no representation, that is at gunpoint. They entrenched segregation, remembering that it's slavery that Haiti had overthrown. The United States brings its own vices from, especially from the southern United States to Haiti, and reestablished, as they did in some other places that they operated, in um, in the Americas. And so you got segregation. They forced Haitians to build the roads for no pay. Again, a form of slavery um, um, reimposed. And protesters were killed. The country's constitution was rewritten. The new laws that the United States passed enabled foreigners to own property for the first time in Haiti after independence. And that military occupation by the United States lasted some 17, no, no, lasted some 19 years. And the US Secretary of State, Robert Lansing, writing in 1918, justified this on grounds, and this would sound familiar to you as good Caribbean people, as a civilizing mission. So they'd come to civilize the Haitians. But it just so happened that they collected monies from the central bank in large quantities as well, just as the Haitians had sent off shiploads of gold to France to pay for having freed themselves from the scourge of slavery imposed on them by the French. So that is a sort of a bird's eye view of
Mhm.
Haiti and some of the travails that it has suffered, and partly an explanation of why you find that the first of the independent states in the region in 2024 finds itself more impoverished than any other state in the region. The color had something to do with it. I was just listening to a regular record before I came um, here, and it was a track called "Is It Because I'm Black?" And the answer is yes. Essentially, this is what happened. The countries around, even those that were assisted by Haiti directly, refused to entertain Haitian envoys, that is,
Mhm.
diplomats from Haiti, were not allowed to be stationed in these countries, including the US, for very, very many years. So that's the reality that you deal with. It is not as though it was another country that had achieved independence and was treated in a similar fashion to other independent countries. You had this phenomenon of discrimination continued and put a lot of pressure on Haiti. When the US was finished with Haiti, American firms dominated in the economic sphere, in addition to the monies that had been extracted from Haiti.
Yes.
If
Wow.
you,
This is this.
yes, I stop there. I could say a little bit more about the current situation, but I leave it
Yes, but
to allow
you
you
know,
to express.
I'm just amazed at you are just rattling off all of this information, and I can tell you the audience is they're eating it up. They're saying they're in class, that this is cool, and so we are so grateful, and we've learned a lot. There's some questions coming through from the audience, but I want to ask
Okay.
former Minister of Foreign Affairs Maxine McLean and former senator to ask. I believe she has a question for you, and then we're going to go to the audience. Go ahead, Miss McLean.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure how I should address you as brother, comrade, friend, or Mr. Greenidge. All of the above. Happy to see
You,
you.
you
And
can
and it
you can
actually,
use. Sorry,
go
please go
ahead.
on. I'm comfortable with any form of address, especially if it elevates me to the level of being um, uh, looked at with a smile by the unionists.
Actually, what I want to ask you touches on what you probably were going to speak about. That's the present, and I basically, since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, I think it was around the 7th of July 2021, we
Correct.
have witnessed, of course, your very good explanation as to what has been done to try to maintain the state of Haiti is very well put. But my concern is that we seem to be seeing a level of violence and so on that has really escalated. And I just wanted to get your sense of your thoughts on this situation and how we need to go forward to address the needs of the people of Haiti. So, given all that has happened and what I see as a concerted effort to make Haiti quote unquote fail because of its historical importance to Africans, to the region, and so on. What are your thoughts about what's happening now, and how can we go forward to get past this?
Well, thanks ever so much. The murder of President Moise. I think we may have been there in Port-au-Prince when he was inaugurated. I was there with
Yes, yes,
President Moise,
yes, yes.
who were there as well, and
Mm-hmm.
it struck us as to what a remarkable event had taken place, because here was someone who was not your professional politician. He wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
your average Haitian politician. One recognized that he would have many challenges because he had come as a businessman,
Right.
promising to do things that the public wanted done, and which the political class had um, failed to deliver. He was the head of a country that, in many ways, was regarded as a failed state for all sorts of reasons, many of which had to do with the exercise of power by other regimes outside of their borders. But what seems to have happened is this, and I can't pretend that I'm an expert on Haiti, because I certainly am not. I have followed a bit of I followed its history over the years, but Haiti is a much larger country than the English-speaking Caribbean territories. And I mention that because that also means it's more complicated. It is, I mean, a country like Suriname, Guyana, which are complex in terms of the cultural uh, mix that you have, and their links to uh, societies outside of their borders, means that it isn't a straightforward examination you carry out. You take a first look and you say, oh yes, this is what is happening. Haiti is a very complicated society because of class and color in particular. But on top of all of that, you have the links. And when I say the links, I mean that when the US, France, Dominican Republic, and other countries outside of Haiti's borders are taken into account, you recognize that they all have interests. They all have power as well, whilst all of them are not in a position to put troops in Haiti. Have been in a position over the years to do things and to build links with groups within Haiti. And that makes for complications in terms of life. It also is the case that you have extremely wealthy Haitians within
Mm-hmm.
Haiti and in the United States. And we know Richard Bernal, who is a former lecturer at the University of the West Indies, had done work which helped to open our eyes to the impact of a small country on decision making in a large state like the United States. Now he talks about how and examines how the state of Jamaica, for example, could organize its business so as to get the US to do the things that Jamaica would like it to do. And one of those is to use the diaspora, the Jamaican diaspora in in the United States. Well, if you've been to Washington in particular, and perhaps a lesser extent to Florida, you realize that there's a very large Haitian diaspora there. That diaspora whilst it may not be managed by the state in the manner that Bernal identified for us in the Jamaican case, it nonetheless exercises influence. And
Mhm.
all I'm saying to you is that you have a number of such groups. It's not a homogeneous group, that group in the United States that are Haitians. They represent different interests, but you have enough of specific groups there for them to be able to have an impact and to represent interests that are, again, not reflective of the needs of all of the Haitian society. So this is what I want to say to you, that when the US, for example, landed troops in Haiti, they represented and collaborated with groups that could prolong and deepen US interests in Haiti.
Mhm.
And the other groups, the French do the same, the Dominican Republic does the same. Uh, Fortunately, the English speaking Caribbean, or unfortunately, doesn't have that capacity. It doesn't, it has links with Haiti, but it's the roots of those links are not deep enough and extensive enough, at least to my knowledge, to be exercising such an influence. So what I'm saying to you is part of the problem that you have in Haiti. It's not peculiar to Haiti because it happens elsewhere in the Caribbean. Is the exercise of influence by these communities, if I might call them that, outside of Haiti's boundaries, who try to manipulate decision making in Haiti, decision making by the government,
Mhm.
behavior and decision making by groups. Now, today, the one that is causing the chaos are gangs and amalgams of gangs whose purpose it is sometimes difficult to decipher. And that is why it becomes very important that you be there or you have a link there so that you can understand who is driving what particular cart. You can't just sit and look at the TV and know, because our news on Haiti is filtered enormously, especially by the United States, but not only. The news the Caribbean people receive about Haiti is heavily filtered. Now, you may say, well, the Bahamas in particular, St. Lucia, and some of the other countries around, to a lesser extent, have direct links and can do their own deciphering. And to some extent, that is true. And in the past, the Caribbean countries have depended heavily upon the Bahamas in particular, and the others who have uh, old French roots and who have current French roots, current cultural links to Haiti, to get an understanding of what is taking place in the background. But of course, it is still at a distance. So the understanding is never perfect, and it is never instant in time. So you will often know, but you know late. But the point is that since the murder of President Moise, um, you've had the emergence of and the strengthening of various groups. And perhaps I shouldn't give you the impression that it only happened after his murder. It was happening before. As a matter of fact, I think a major point that we have to bear in mind is that the regime of the Duvaliers left roots um, in Haiti that are still there, whether it is the successors of the Tonton Macoute or other groups that are criminally oriented, in the sense that they're not prepared to accept the outcome of the mechanisms where the rights of the majority are involved. So there's that group. And you had another group, more recent, arising from the presidency of John Bertrand Aristide, a former Catholic priest. Um, these are two of the other major groups that help to fuel a lot of the violence and problems that you see today. I'm not saying, for example, that it's Aristide's group who woke up one morning and started a war with anybody else. I'm saying that these are all groups with interests, and what happened after the Duvaliers fell was that the groups most closely allied to them found it necessary to try and assert themselves, even in the absence of the former leaders. And sometimes, for example, that assertion was exercised against those who had newly emerged as as followers of John Bertrand Aristide and his wife. And as you know, the story of Aristide is a partly problematic one because this was a man who had been removed by the military. And then in 2000, he came back to Haiti out of exile and ran in 2000, I think won the election in 2002 or thereabouts, and then was removed again in 2004 uh, in circumstances which I think help to explain why the Haitian public behaves in a way that sometimes appears irrational to the rest of the region. In the
Mm-hmm.
case of Aristide, who, as I said, was democratically elected, as democratically, if not more so, than many of the others that we embrace. He was visited before dawn one morning by the US ambassador to Haiti. And the ambassador came in his diplomatic car and on February the 29th offered Haiti, offered President
Aristide.
Aristide and his wife um, a ride. I think when they left the president's palace, they had no idea where they were going. They were taken to the airport, and at the tarmac, they were placed on a plane. Whether they knew where they were going, even at that point, I don't know. But they arrived in Bangui, which is in Central African Republic. His only connection with that place is, of course, like us, he's black. But he had never, he never asked to be sent there. He had no interest there. But it was the US and France that found it appropriate to remove him from office. And they removed him from office under uh, the rubric of trying to prevent escalating violence in Haiti, which is which is if you read some of the more, what shall I say, more radical analysts of the Haitian situation, immediately the idea of sending troops to Haiti to restore peace raises their blood pressure. And there's a reason for this. You can see that it is ridiculous. Gangs take over a country or most of a country, and its police and other um, forces are not able to suppress them. And obviously, some assistance is needed. If they can't do it domestically, some external assistance may be needed. But there are groups that resist this. All of them are not crazy, and they are not all uh, groups that are aligned to mischief makers in Haiti. But some of them, I think, well, no, are clearly reacting to the experience of uh, the treatment of John Bertrand Aristide, who many believe was removed not so much for some of the actions of his supporters, but for the temerity that he had to be publicly calling upon France to repay, I think it may have been over 200, oh, over 21 trillion US dollars he claimed was owed by France to Haiti for the ransom and other other payments that they forced Haiti at gunpoint to pay to them
To pay.
since
Mhm.
1795. So that was a convenient way to get rid of him because people might get ideas. They may think he was telling the truth. And so that is why the US and others wanted him removed. And again, when what seems to be an evident solution or an evident option is rejected by the Haitian public, you have to understand there are complexities in Haiti that may not be obvious to you. I'm not saying
Yes.
you must I'm not saying you must accept that they're right. I'm saying you must stop to think that there are other issues that you may not, with which you may not be familiar, that are informing behavior that seems to be completely irrational. And so we are in a situation where the Haitians are very wary of foreign involvement. They are always remembering, if you like, historical experience. Aristide himself, when he landed in Bangui, apparently made a statement to the press reminding them of what happened to Toussaint Louverture, the first Haitian revolutionary who organized the overthrow of the French, um, completed by Dessalines. But he reminded them that in 1802, French soldiers took away Toussaint Louverture after he had signed a peace agreement. They carted him off to prison in the Jura Mountains, which is really a very, very cold place. Within a year of them taking him there, he had died. So they
Yeah.
effectively murdered him, although he had agreed to a peace treaty because they wanted more than they knew he would be prepared to give. And so that's how he lost his life, and that's how Haiti lost its first its first revolutionary leader. And
Yeah.
today, after going through several cycles of assistance from France, Britain, Spain, United States, and some of them believe the UN multilateral force, which entered Haiti in 2004. I mean, that again, it's a more complicated thing. One doesn't want to take take a line that is unreasonable when assistance was intended. But I'm trying to say to you, you need to recognize that people have memories and they also have, by virtue of experience, become very suspicious, even of regional neighbors offering assistance. If in Europe they
Yeah.
can say beware of Greeks bearing
Mhm.
gifts, you can understand that Haiti would have a comparable Creole saying to represent that sort of danger.
Mr. Greenidge, oh my goodness, this is so enlightening. I see you, Mr. Franklin, I see Miss Maxine there at the edge of her seat. Very enlightening. There's a question from the audience, and I want to keep them involved. Someone is asking, can you speak to the rumors of the Clinton Foundation in Haiti, because we've been hearing and reading about some of the atrocities that were alleged to have happened in Haiti during the Clinton, while the Clinton Foundation, when they went there to help. And I think that these might be some of the issues that the Haitians have, where they're not sure if they want to accept the help. Can you speak to that, sir?
Well, I can't. I've seen in the literature references to this. The assistance offered by the foundation and the impact on some groups of the poor, on children and others. I don't think that out of the top of my head, I can really give you an authoritative response in this regard. As I say, Haiti is quite a big society, and I try to avoid what isn't formally established you will read is that entirely accurate. There are a number of commentators who uh, were very critical of the positions that the foundation itself took. But Clinton himself did have difficulty or didn't see eye to eye with President Aristide and his followers and the way they behaved and the things they were demanding. So you can take it from that yes, there was tension in that regard, and that I think is fairly well established. I know
Yes.
that
Wow.
isn't a definitive answer you're seeking, but I'm not in a position to tell you definitively about that. But it is true,
We
and I'm,
like.
I'm looking at a comment from someone terming themselves Easy D. Easy D sounds like a rapper. Um, but the question of the pledges that were made to Haiti when the UN and the US and the international community recognized that this place had been subject to all sorts of natural disasters. You're speaking of earthquakes, even from even from the turn of the 20th century. One of the most famous and one of the most devastating earthquakes took place in Haiti, um, to 2021 when you had um, floods as well as earthquakes um, and hurricanes. It has suffered terribly as a result of these natural disasters. And it isn't to say that they're the only people that suffer, because across the Caribbean you suffer. But you understand, to the extent that you are impoverished, heavily impoverished, and unable to even have infrastructure to help to protect you from inclement weather, infrastructure that could have been put in place if these monies hadn't been forced out of you by the French and their warships, then
Mhm.
you will recognize that Haiti has had many, many, many promises of assistance, particularly after 2010. Um, the earthquake. My understanding is most of those pledges have not been fulfilled. Whilst countries go around the world saying we will make this and that available, large
Mhm.
amounts available, they were not provided for a number of reasons. Again, this might be linked to the Clinton story, especially because the US, of course, sells aid as part of a package. So that package, the agreement to give you $10 million, comes with a requirement that the distribution or the um, private sector is involved in a specific way, that the government sector isn't to be involved, and these sorts of problems, which for Haiti, I think pose many problems, because for a country which has um, the difficulties and such low levels of income as Haiti, the role of the public sector, the role of municipalities looms very large, because these are um, uh, services often that need to be provided collectively. And if you are dealing with donors that tell you, no, you can't have the government involved in this matter, or they can't supply B, then you reduce the value of the assistance you're providing, and you, in the process, may well undermine further the capacity of the collective sector, meaning the central government and the municipalities. And you've had this problem elsewhere. You were speaking about Rwanda before I came on, and Uganda in particular. And these are places that had difficulty with US demands that NGOs, rather than the government, that specific private agencies, rather than central government, be involved in certain activities. And people pushed back against these. The leaders were able to push back. But if you have undermined the capacity of leadership and governance in in a country such as Haiti, it becomes difficult often for them to resist meaningfully. So this is what may lie behind the types of criticisms and complaints that
Yes.
you are seeing about the Clinton Foundation.
Yes, yes, thank you. So, Mr. Franklin, I know we're going over the time, but we're bear with us, Mr. Carr, bear with us, Mr. Greenidge, I should say. But Mr. Franklin, go ahead with your question. Oh, you're muted, sir. You're muted, Mr.
Milton.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One is not Haiti, and I'm going to leave that until if we have a little bit of time after. But I would want to hear, sir, your views on the proposed military intervention that CARICOM, including Barbados, is proposing for Haiti. I have my views on it too, but I'm totally against it. But I want to hear somebody who might be able to inform my views.
Well, I'd like to try. I don't claim I don't claim omniscience. As I said to you, my experience tells me that Haiti is a complex place, and the fact is that there are attitudes in Haiti that are not always helpful if you just take a solution or take an option and throw it at them, because they would have had maybe that option and had experience with it, and there are circumstances that will make them um, critical of it. But basically, the situation as I see is this: you have a situation where the forces, the powers within Haiti, are unable to deliver law and order. If you are within borders, and within those borders, people cannot be assured of security. It means that all sorts of problems arise. You have um, not only the lives of people, but their livelihoods are threatened. And let me explain what I mean. In the last fortnight, my understanding is that you've had probably in excess of 550 people killed. Yes, Haiti is a big country compared to Barbados and Guyana, but it's still a lot of people. On a per capita basis, it's a lot of people. And nobody wants to live in a situation where uh, that sort of impunity that we see, and I don't know if you've seen some of the videos that I've seen of people on the street uh, finding themselves in the process of trying to go about their daily lives, being shot at, being intimidated and dragged off the streets by gangs or people that are unidentified. You have a situation in which the police who come to attend to or try to restore order being the targets of gangs, then you cannot maintain order in a society like that. It poses a threat to the weak people in the society, to those of us who don't have the money to pay for gangsters, to those of us who are not connected to gangsters. It means that this is not a place in which you could survive easily. And for that reason, um, whether President or himself has other motives, let me not go there. Right? All I'm saying to you is it is evident, looking at the society, that that society cannot protect its vulnerable. Port-au-Prince, in particular, seems to be in the grips of a a set of gangs. And it isn't just that gangs are there, existing. It is that they are armed. It is that they are receiving increasing amounts of arms. It is the case that they are exceptionally violent. I mean, in a sense, somebody was saying, well, Jamaica's violent, El Salvador is violent, and we are not calling upon troops from outside of El Salvador to go and rescue Salvadorians. Well, I don't know whether that is a serious comment. You do have violence elsewhere in the Caribbean, including Jamaica. It isn't as though the violence we see in Jamaica is anything like the scale or across all of Jamaica as you see occurring in Haiti. And when violence is unpredictable or predictably in existence across wide areas, it becomes difficult for economic activity to take place. It becomes difficult for one to get food when gangs are deliberately um, trying to prevent the public getting food, getting water when um, essential supplies are coming in, and they try to seize those supplies and then trying to either make you to pay the gang or trying to ensure that you are supportive of the gang. And if you aren't, they will not give you access to those facilities. So that is what one has to bear in mind. The I think ideally, of course, it would be best if the country can fix those problems itself. But it is clear that they can't. You don't have a countervailing force with arms powerful enough to deal with the men in the street. NGOs who might normally have enough people to deal with the gang certainly don't have the firepower, and it is not really wise to be sending innocent people to face gangs in these circumstances. And therefore, myself, I believe that it would be appropriate to have an external force come in for purposes of disarming and quelling what has become a chaotic uh, and unhealthy physical environment. Now, the question you may well ask, and this is the question I would uh, agree with you on, that the solution is not simply to send in arms or armed men to put down those people. Even as you are taking away their arms, or even as you are telling them to dispose of their arms, you have to have something else in place in terms of communal and community programs. Haiti has, as I've been indicating, been an impoverished country for reasons that have to do with the things I mentioned, but also because of the tremendous impact of natural disasters on Haiti, natural disasters on agriculture, where the public depends, on which the public depends for its living. And might I say to you that agriculture has been particularly dramatically damaged by the hurricanes and the floods in recent times. And as a consequence, you have come to see in a way that we have not seen here, except perhaps in a place like Papua New Guinea, the movement of young people from rural areas to urban areas in numbers that destabilize those urban areas. Because they arrive without jobs, they arrive often without relatives or means of support. And so they quickly join gangs as a means of getting access to facilities, and that immediately poses problems for the community that they have joined. So that is the point that one has to bear in mind. I'm saying that you cannot call upon the US or Kenya, which has had experience, its army has had experience in dealing with insurrection in a variety of places, including in East Africa itself, in their neighbors in Somalia and so forth. You can't just expect that to be a solution to the problem. Say, oh, send us 10,000 troops and it'll be cool. Because it will not. It will not. You don't just want uh, armed men shooting at each other. You want those who are on the streets doing these illegal things to understand that there is value in putting down their arms. In other words, a viable program of based upon an economic plan. I mean, that's not a fashionable word in these times, especially in North America, but you understand what I mean. A program so that they can find jobs, they can learn skills, they can acquire the basic facilities that they need to acquire, and they can go about their business on the streets so as to get water and bread and so forth without putting their
The
lives on
basic
the line
things.
simply in order to survive. And so I'm saying that in addition, I am happy to see CARICOM take a position where they acknowledge, and it isn't that they have to be criticized for not acknowledging. They have acknowledged, and up to last year, the Declaration of Sovereignty. And I'm very pleased to see that Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Bahamas, and others have offered to participate in the exercise, but it requires more than that. It is going to require manpower. Language is going to be a problem here and a challenge, so that we understand the society and we can communicate with these brothers and sisters in neighboring territory. And what is going to be important is to be able to provide in the various communities means by which they can encourage young people and those who are tempted to join gangs today, those who are in the gangs, to leave those gangs for a more normal life and a normal existence.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
that's my response to you,
yeah, respond. Thank you
Mr.
so
Franklin.
much. Thank you so much. Mr. Carl Greenidge, this has been so educational, and I know we've gone over the time that
Yeah, we keep doing that.
yeah, but it is quite educational.
Yeah, I know,
I
but
must say, I
you,
must
you
say.
introduced him, though, Marcia, as a former Minister of Finance. And this is a quick question, half second answer that I would like to ask him, if
Oh,
you don't mind.
okay. Half second
You know,
answer, real quick,
you know,
because we've gone
he's,
over.
as a former Minister of Finance, would you ever consider it appropriate to be out of the country during the estimates?
Well, I have perhaps dealt with more untrustworthy MPs than many other ministers of finance. So my answer to you would be no. It would be no. But
Would be no. You
it is,
okay?
yeah. Some people have to learn. Some people learn from experience. Maybe they're too trusting, and maybe they just don't recognize what they're facing. So
Yes.
I hope that answers your question.
Well, they know answered it for me.
We know answered it for you. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. You want to make sure that because we told him a specific time. Thank you so much, Mr. Greenidge, for being on with us tonight. We learned so much, and you put a lot of things in context. We will be calling you on you again, sir. Thank you so much. Please say thank you to your assistant as well, who worked so well in making this possible. All right. Thank
It is.
you. God bless.
It has been our pleasure, and thank you for affording us the opportunity. And I wish you
Yeah,
Thank,
continued success in your program. And
thank you.
I thank your my colleagues, both Mr. Franklin and Marcia for being Maxine, sorry, for uh, for
I have a
recommending.
sister named Marcia.
Okay, my apologies. Take care. Thanks ever
right.
so much. Have
Thank
a
you
good
so
night.
much.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Good.
Great lesson, Kamar says. God bless you. Have a good night.
Good.
Wow, I tell you, this is a top program tonight. We are learning so much. There's just so much is being offloaded, and the people are eating it up. They're listening. Simone Daniel says, thank you for sharing with us, Honorable Mr. Greenidge. Thank you, 1776. And the chat was a lit. I'm learning from the chat too, you know. I'm reading the chat and learning from the chat, and people have been staying with the show, even though we started at 6:30. Well, we have about 30 minutes left, about a little over 30 minutes left, and we have to touch some local issues. Mr. Franklin, you come into focus with this bra. And at the beginning, I said I needed, Miss McLean to say what bra was, because I didn't want people to think, because I know we had some viewers from different places on tonight.
We are
So I
here.
made sure that it's the Barbados Revenue Authority, right? I said that correctly, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I clarified that at the beginning. So, Mr. Franklin, what's happening there? Is there anything you have to tell us tonight?
Well, except that people from Bra, a lot of them were surprised by the allegations. Some knew, but a lot of them were surprised and said, "We've been all these things going on around us," And I think it allowed me to raise my membership by a couple on Saturday because people realized that somebody is looking out for their interests, and we got some people on Saturday because they work on Saturday, and we were in the office, using our placards for the marches. We were using them. We were passing them over and making signs for the industrial actions this week.
Oh,
I
what is
wouldn't.
happening this week? Tell me.
Well,
Can you tell us?
this week, what has happened is that the Bra is treating us like little fools. Oh yeah, we can talk with you, but they're not actually coming and doing anything. When we wrote to them and said that we are the most representative union and we want to have joint recognition with another union, I didn't want to displace anybody. I just wanted to be able to represent my people peacefully. And they said that they're going to take it to the Labor Department after we started industrial action because they refused to take any action on it. And only when we informed them that we would be taking industrial action without any further reference to them, they then rushed and sent the matter off to the Labor Department. But the Labor Department did come in and they counted our members and they told BRA that at that time, we had 107 people, which is more than any other union in Barbados at BRA. But yet still, since that's happened over 2 weeks ago, BRA has not communicated with us to say anything. But we want to get down to dealing with the issues at BRA because we have a messenger who was dismissed because he didn't do anything wrong. Now let me explain. He was given money orders. If you have property and you live overseas, you will send a postal order to Barbados to pay your taxes. They would give the postal orders to the messenger, and the messenger would take them to the post office, and the post office would have to do something, check to make sure these postal orders are good orders, and they would then write BRA a check. Well, let's say he took $5,000 in postal. It's not the exact numbers, but let's say he took $5,000 in postal orders. He bought back less than $5,000, and without checking to see what happened, they dismissed him. Only to find out that the post office hadn't verified that amount yet. The amount that was short by, so they wouldn't send that amount to BRA. Normally they would write a check, but the check came for less than the amount they sent down. So the first thing that they can come with is that the fellow stole the money, and without doing any proper, I say proper, but any investigation at all, they decided that he stole it. But after he had been dismissed, the post office then sent the money up. The decent thing to do about that would have been to say, "Oh Lord, we made a mistake," but they're too big and too mighty to admit a mistake. So they don't want to re-employ him. They want to pay him out, but he has responsibilities, and he's not at the highest level where you can have a lot of savings. He's a messenger. Those are at the bottom of the scale in the public service. So I don't expect they would have a lot of savings that you can keep him for the next 10 years. And even if you give him a lump sum, I know they're proposing a lump sum. We don't want a lump sum. We want his job back because some people in Bra were dishonest in dealing with his matter, and I do not think that their dishonesty should be rewarded by keeping him out of a job. He's done nothing wrong. The other things that we have were staff are being abused, verbally abused, threatened. Then you have instances where people come from outside, from one of the entities where the current commissioner used to work, and bring them even from the overseas offices and bring them here and get the officers in Bra to train them and then promote them above the people that train them. But they're not going to like that. After all, you are training somebody for a job that you can't get, that you are qualified for, that you are doing and doing well, but they're bringing people from outside of the organization, and because those people don't have the experience, you might have the qualification, but you don't have the experience because there are no private sector agencies that collect taxes, land tax, income tax, corporation tax, whatever. No private sector agency has that expertise. So they have to rely on the brass staff to then to retrain them into doing government work. But the people that are there and have been there for years can't get the jobs. Then there are other people who, by law, no, are supposed to be promoted because they reach a particular point in the scale and have the number of years. So it's an automatic thing, but they refuse to pay them. So these are some of the issues that the Bra people are having. And of course, these people can't go and do valuations and stuff also because that's not their field. So the people who are at the top can make extra money, but the people at the bottom can't make the money that they are already entitled to. That is bringing a measure of problems in the organization because people are being victimized. And so because they have not taken the steps to even be respectful, they got the information from the Labor Department because the Labor Department copied the communication to us. So we know they have it. It was hand delivered to me and it was hand delivered to them. But they do not want some person to stand up to them. They want this blind, like more like neocolonial behavior where they think they're mightier than everybody else and they can treat you like a fool. But the workers are tired of that. And you see, you must also remember though that Bra came out of some sort of dishonest act on the part of many senior civil servants who fooled the government, because a lot of government agencies do not particularly give the politicians the best advice. When Bra was supposed to be established, it was to collect government arrears. So each department that collected money from the public, they were given a particular time to collect the money, and if it didn't come in within a 3-month period or so, if it became due by 3 months, then you would have transferred it to this agency who would have done the collections. As a matter of fact, I was one of the persons who, because I was a bailiff in those days too, so they contacted me and asked if I would be interested in pursuing some of that. But by the time all that thing changed up and people changed on things, Brad took over the agencies, and it was that. I don't know why, but they now have this monster called the Barbados Revenue Authority that seems to be a law unto itself. It has to be reined in, and with God's help, we will do it. It is as simple as that.
Your industrial action is going to be tomorrow. I'm trying to. Is it something you can say, or not, you can't say when it
No,
is yet?
we will not say to the public. The public will hear, because I even got a call today from one of the people in the media, but that was the media person who I promised them that I'll have nothing more to say to them because they treat the staff badly. So
Right.
even though they might give me coverage that might be favorable, I don't want it
Hmm.
because I don't want to
To be
deal with
part
people
of that kind of
who
behavior.
mistreat staff, and
Hmm.
that is why I don't eat at certain restaurants. That is why I don't shop at certain places, because when I go there and I see how they treat the staff, I say I come back in here.
Hmm.
You know, I have that. Mind you, there are some employers who call me and say, "Caswell, I have a problem. How do you think we should deal with this?" And I don't charge them. I say, "Well, look, this is how it should be done. You can
Hmm.
check with your lawyer. You can check with your employers' confederation, whatever. But these are my views, and that's because I don't want strife. I want workers to be treated fairly. If
Hmm.
it comes to strife, so be it. But that is not our goal. Our goal would be to have a harmonious relationship with the people that we work for. Is it because people don't understand? And I think some workers don't even want to understand, because I remember going to the airport and I said to some of the staff, I said, listen to me. My job here is to make sure the airport makes money.
Hmm.
Because if the airport don't make money, you ain't gonna get no money, you can't get no raise. And then I can't get my juice by you either. So you need to go in there and do your best. And some of them get vexed because they were so angry about the way they were being treated before that they couldn't see it possible to like move away from that position. And some of them even left the union because of my stance. I said to them, no, my job is to make sure that where you're working is profitable. You're working for a hotel. I want the hotel to make money. I want if it's a supermarkets to make money, because the only way they're going to make money, you're going to get a raise, is if they make money,
Mhm.
if you're
Hmm.
going to get any benefits. So I always encourage people to do the best job possible. But when
Yeah.
you're doing the best job and you're being mistreated, that is where I come in, because I'm not going to stand for it. I'm not going to tell people go in there and damage equipment, go in there and be a sloth and don't do your work or whatever. No, I want you to work. I want you to work hard. And I want you to work to your full capacity, because then I can ask. I say, well, look, these people are working well for you and they're generating a profit. You gotta get them some.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. But Mr. Franklin, I wish you well on your, I don't know if it's going to be a march or whatever it is. I wish you well on that, and all the workers, and that whatever what you're advocating for, that they get justice. I want to ask you though, what is the what will be your next steps with everything that you have found out, the groundbreaking um, news that came on the show, the exposure, the kind of exposure that you gave on the show on Friday. What are your next steps?
Well, I am prepared to to turn over the information that I have. I'm not going to give them the actual documents if it is a government department, because they might be able to trace where I got them from. So I will not. I will give them the information on them. I will even sit down and transcribe the information I want them to have, so they can go and check.
Hmm.
But I believe, and as I say, it's painful to me to be asking to have workers dismissed. But when you know, it's not in my DNA. But
Yes.
but when I see the level of corruption, somebody needs to pay for it. And if you are so deliberately corrupt, you have no right or to be in a position of trust in the government service or anybody's service whatsoever. You have to be. I'm not asking for saints, but definitely not asking for Al Capone's either. And that is what we're having. They seem to run a gang and these departments and collect money, and they live lavish lives, way beyond their salaries, and nobody seems to do anything about it or want to do anything about it. And I can understand, because they have to build properties, because when they get this fantastic set of money, they can't go and take it to the bank because the bank asks where you get it from. So they put it in real estate, and they make sometimes the houses are monstrosities that they build because they gotta find some place to put that money. Yeah, they gotta put it under the bed, and that's the first place the crooks gonna look. And so you have to put it in the cement blocks. And nobody, and if you're working in a department that deals with collecting money, and you see your staff changing the car every 2 years, and they bring the top of the line vehicles, and they are living in palatial circumstances, when the kind of money that I'm paying you wouldn't justify that type of thing, you got to check them out. It's only fair. And but what is also that bothersome to me is that when these people become rich off of the government's coffers, because this is money that should be going into the treasury, we then have to turn around and borrow it and commit my children and my grandchildren to be paying loans forever, when they could have just paid the money to the treasury and we won't have to borrow so much. Mind you, I think politicians will still borrow money, but at least this current lot. But at least they won't got the justification that they have, no, because they ain't getting money. And the monies that they are getting is severely understated because of the corruption.
Yeah.
And what they are doing, and this is the next area I'm going to touch when we speak another time. But right now, could you ask Bra, or anybody ask Bra, when was the last time they had these meetings for people to get tax relief? They're refusing to do tax relief for people who cannot afford it. You'll have a person who probably retired or inherited a property from the mother. They never have the kind of income that they can pay the tax, but the mother used to be paying it. No, they don't have the kind of income or any income at all. They just rely on a small pension or thing from it, and they're asking them to pay these fantastic taxes, and they can't. Well, they're entitled to tax relief, but they're entitled to tax relief when you apply for it and they have a meeting, the tax relief board approves your application. And I'm going to ask, when was the last time the tax relief board met to consider taxes? But however, because the IMF has imposed certain targets, Bra, rather than give people tax relief, and I believe it is official policy, even though not stated, you allow those properties to accumulate enough taxes, and then you sell them. And when you sell them for a fantastic price, and you meet your targets that way. So the IMF is happy, the government is happy, and the people who inherited house that was never able to buy one in the first place have lost their properties. This is going on in Bra right now, and something has to be done about it, because a government of this country should not be here to exploit poor people. Mind you, that's the only people that can exploit, because the poor people will move against them. You see like how they move against the Democratic Labour Party government and say, well, BNP and NSRL, and they enlist the support of the unions and the Barbados Labour Party. And one of the first things this government did was to repeal that legislation to stop those people who could afford to pay the tax from paying it.
Right.
And then impose that tax on the people who could not afford to put it in water and do all kind of fancy things to make back up that money that they lost. I have a lot of difficulty with people who come out there and call themselves the Labour Party and then treat Labour badly in preference to the capitalists in this country, because the people in Labour can only go out there and vote for you and jump up and have big meetings,
Yeah.
but they can't give you campaign contributions, but the people can give you $7,500
Yeah.
every month for 4 months, and but I can't afford that. So you can go to the people who can do that for you, and that is the problem we are having. The government must look out for the workers and look out for the most vulnerable. The rich people don't need the government to look out for them. That is why you see under Errol Barrow, Tom Adams, Grantley Adams, they call themselves democratic socialists. They are
Socialist. Yeah.
socialists because it was a type of, not quite like Robin Hood, but they took the taxes from the rich and provided for the poor. Now
Yeah.
this government is taking from the poor and providing for the rich.
Mhm.
Even to the extent no one take it, poor people land that their grandmothers and their great grandmothers passed down through the years. We went from seed to seed land, and now you're losing it.
Yeah.
And
But you
I,
know,
and I
Mr. Franklin, just I want to bring Miss McLean in this conversation. Miss McLean, I'm sure I hope you heard on Friday what Miss what Caswell was sharing on the program, reading
Yeah,
land tax,
I
and
was
how
on.
in some instances people are being victimized. When you think of Minister Sonia Brown, I mean, we don't know why, but look at what's happening with her land taxes and so on. What are your thoughts as a former minister of government? What's going through your mind when you hear these things?
No, it really concerns me about how people who are in authority can use or rather misuse that authority.
Hmm.
You know, when we talk about corruption and fraud and these things, people like to associate that with politicians. The reality, and certainly in a lot of instances, politicians are not in a position to undertake specific actions such as those, at least certainly not directly. Um, it, it calls upon people to be professional, um, and to do the necessary. I mean, I listened to the case, and if I remember correctly, the word an officer who was into enforcement, if that was it. In other words, the person who's supposed to be, um, in other words, who's policing the police, put it that way. You have
Hmm.
a duty. And a number of scenarios come to mind. One, somebody, and I think just is repeating some of what I think Caswell would have said. If somebody figures that they are going to ingratiate themselves by doing something for you that is wrong, then it should not be upheld. you know but it is one of those things where people, as I said, are abusing the authority. There must be opportunities to challenge these things,
Yes.
and in the case of establishing that wrongdoing is done, to deal with it,
Hmm.
consistent with what the rules would say. But it also takes me to something, and if I could refer to the comments of the leader of the opposition. I was not home on Friday morning when Parliament resumed the debate,
Yeah.
but there was a whole so I listened in the evening when I got back home, and the whole issue of morality, at the individual and national level. I heard reference to the need for a moral compass,
Hmm.
and I think what it says to me is that, look, as individuals, as persons in this country, at whatever level and wherever you sit, I always say this to people: when I look in the mirror, I need to be comfortable with who is looking back at me. And this is not because somebody's behind me looking in the mirror. I'm talking about me looking at myself. People need to be able to set their own principles and observe those things. In other words, you not only do it because you run the risk of being punished for doing it, but there's some things you simply say, I will not do. And that bothers me. That, I mean, I've been around longer than Caswell, as he reminds us all the time. And you see the kinds of things that make you question how come, you know, and it also stems from, for me, from the importance to relegate material things somewhere at the back of the line, if you see what I mean. Because why do people do some of these things? They do them because they want more than they would normally be able to afford or whatever, you know. And I just think that it comes down at the end of the day to individuals saying there are some boundaries that I will not cross. But where they do cross them, they need basically to have, you know, they have to be dealt with.
Yes.
And you know, there's also a mentality in Barbados among some people. I waited my turn. John Brown and that generation did it, so I'm waiting my turn to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
And that is unfortunate. We have to pull back on a lot of fronts in Barbados. And at very senior levels, you know, at levels of leadership, let me put it that way, wherever you are, whether it's in the church, it's in private sector, it is in government, it's in the public service, people in leadership positions have to recognize the importance of being exemplars. You have
Yes.
to set examples.
Example.
And I tell people, unless we take that personal responsibility to be that, you know, we will find all kind of excuses. Well, you know, this or whatever the case may be. So, I agree. The weights that they need to put on their hands, Marcia, must be what I call a personal weight, because, you know, it I mean, you see, I look at these things, you know, I work, well, I remember, I like to use myself as an example. I served in capacities where, and this is long before politics, where I could have gotten involved in things like insider trading. I'll share an example. I was a director of a large conglomerate in Barbados. And I sat at a board meeting once, and the then managing director said, the chairman of the board said, when we got the financial report, that the company had done very well. And the comment was, if the share prices don't go up now, they will never go up. I could have gone home and picked up the phone and called a friend of mine or a sibling, one of my sisters who carried another surname, and say, go and buy some shares in this company. And nobody would have been the wiser, because in fact, what happened? But for me, the notion of insider trading is not something that I talked about in abstract. It is something I lived. I couldn't do it. You know, and so for me, that's when I talk about being an exemplar, being, you know, setting your own standard, having your own moral compass. And you know, there's a saying in Barbados, which I don't subscribe to, because if I did, I wouldn't be where I am now. Too long honest, too long poor. You know, and some people, and that, but Caswell would have heard this. You know, and so I tell people, at the end of the day, for me, I have to face me. And it isn't about what people think about me or whatever. It is about me, what I think about me. And I think that is something that I hope people will start adopting onto themselves. I see we've been joined by Kimar. So maybe,
Yes, good night. Good night.
Good
how are
night.
you?
Good
Hi,
night.
Kimar.
Yeah,
How are you
I,
well,
doing?
I know you. I know you had a big speech tonight, and a big presentation. And so, you know, we weren't sure if you were going to be able to join us. But it's always good to have you. I'm sure you've heard on Friday the big bombshell that Mr. Franklin, you know, placed on us here about BRA and the land tax. And but thank you to Dr. Brown for bringing this up. And then I'm sure, well, although I know Mr. Franklin had been researching this a while, you know, but she kind of made it current. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or what's on your mind.
yes, well, good evening to you all. I had a good day with you.
Yeah.
Um, I had a really good evening so far. Marcy, I love this red coat that you have on. Is this a jacket?
Okay.
Is this a jacket?
It is a jacket.
Oh,
And,
really?
Miss McLean was teasing me that certain times I bring out a jacket, but I follow your footsteps. You see,
Oh,
you're a
You see,
troublemaker.
we had international guests. You understand? She ain't put on a jacket for me, okay, Mar.
yeah. But nevertheless, I am happy to see her looking all nice tonight. Um, bruh, I heard what Mr. Franklin was saying about bruh. I think that
As
that's
both
one of
time you
the
call me Caswell, though.
or
No,
just
as
a
both
old
time you
habit,
call me Caswell. Well, you stop it.
Yeah, but I heard what Caswell was saying about the bra, and the other today I was speaking about it coming down in the car. Um, bra, I can't believe that you would employees will have that type of power where they could raise and decrease your land tax at will, and they could have a brush where one fits Maxine and one fits Caswell and one fits Marcia, and if you don't like this person, I can raise your land tax. That type of power should not be reserved for employees, right? And the Revenue Authority, which is under the Ministry of Finance, which is essentially the Prime Minister being the Ministry of Finance, she has to intervene and fix this because BRA, as it is, needs reform. And part of the IMF program is supposed to fix these things, right? So they should use the opportunity now to completely restructure BRA so that this type of corruption could stop. Let me think, but I would say that land tax has been used as a tool to keep the poor and to bring the middle class down to poor.
Hmm.
Because if you can pick and choose whose land taxes will be high, what to say that I have the income to be able to pay? And I went to Brad's last land fair where they were auctioning off people's property. Right? I went and I observed it because, as I said on the show, I am a real estate agent. So I go and I see these things and I said to myself, well, quite a few persons in Barbados are losing properties. They can't afford to pay the land taxes. Land taxes went up as part of the IMF arrangement. And if it is that persons are losing their houses because
Hmm.
of not because of genuine, but because of corruption, then well, I don't expect her to do it, but the Prime Minister should and must intervene to restructure bar because only the Minister of Finance and essentially the Prime Minister has the power to be able to restructure an organization. This is the taxpayers. Bar collects revenue on behalf of the government. And if you have government funds being mismanaged in this way, which is the case through all other ministries, Water Authority, which is now trying to turn it to a mini bar, right? If this is the case of how they handle land taxes, then you can see a lot more persons suffering the same fate as Dr. Brown. If Caswell pays land tax, I suspect that Caswell's land tax can be so high because he covered like what you say, right? But nobody should have that power in their hand. If that is so, a board should be making these type of decisions, and not one person. And if there's evidence out there to suggest that persons are using their positions at bar to misuse their power to be able to disadvantage workers, Sonia Brown's a member of parliament, right? She's a member of parliament. Not saying that just because she's a member of parliament, you treat her differently. But the same way you can target Sonia Brown, much say how I believe this type of crime bill will be used to target innocent people, this type of measure should be taken out of the hands of people who, by Caswell's admission and submission, are abusing their authority much to the disadvantage of Barbadians.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of bad behavior. When I started to work in the public service, temporary officers were never allowed to collect government revenue. But one of the reasons is that you if you are a permanent employee, you got your pension and all kind of stuff up there that you don't want losing in case catch you. So that was like a controlling measure to make sure that You ain't gonna be working for 6 months, and you see you have a lot of money, you carry some and then rent the airport, as has happened at Bra. You have sessional people. Why they have sessional people? Because the sessional people can strike. Because if they strike, they don't give them another session. So they want to make sure that the staff cannot enforce their rights. So they put the receiving government revenue in the hands of people who have no security of tenure and got nothing to worry about, because they could get a 6 months here and then they don't give them another 6 months. We'll give them 6 months and then 5 months and then they go home. And BRA is behaving like an unconscionable employer in Barbados in that regard, because under the Employment Rights Act, if you give people a series of contracts and those contracts go over a year, then in order to get you out of the organization, they have to have a reason, and they have to give you then what people like to call natural justice. You have to be able to be heard, and it got to be for, and they can only take you out for misconduct and or poor performance. Then you have to have a hearing. If it is any other way, you got to look at pay these people some money. So the government, because BRA is a statutory board which is bound by the provisions of the Employment Rights Act, so they are behaving like unscrupulous employers. So what has happened? This government is an unscrupulous employer, and it is allowing certain sections of the government service to treat people badly. Since I spoke about BRA, somebody from the NCC called me to say that they don't get vacation. They mind you, they provide tools except for the weed whacker. They use their own weed whackers, but everything else comes from NCC. They don't get vacation. They don't get sick days. Nothing. The National Conservation Commission is another unscrupulous employer that is owned by the government and treating people, some of the offenses that this government has been doing. If it were a private employer, they will face a jail sentence or a $10,000 fine or both. You know, and the government is doing it because nobody ain't going to want to lock up, and certainly the Labor Department ain't going to want to take any action against another government department. And that is the problem we're having in Barbados today. Government is leading the way in bad behavior, and the other employers are following suit. Something that's been going on for years, and on a particular one, and this, you are telling people who actually do work, we give you back a day. I call it a loo day. That's against the law. That's against the convention be signed with the International Labour Organization. But you give people what they call loo days for people actually working. And the law is that if you do actual work, you're going to be paid a legal tender. Legal tender is money. You know, and I explain this way to people. I say, look, if I work for you, I give you my labor, and you pay me with an asset that belongs to you, which is money.
Right.
However, if you give me back time, that asset is not yours to give. So you're actually getting me to work for you for nothing. Because when you give me back a day, the time don't belong to you, it belong to God. And so unless you decide that you are God, then you could pay me back with time. And the government has been doing this for years. And now I hear people in the private sector say, oh, we can allude there. That is illegal. Check the conventions that we have signed, and we signed it on this, I think it's the May 8th, 1967. One of the first set of conventions the government signed, because prior to those conventions were in the 50s. But Barbados was not an independent country then, and they cannot sign conventions because we were bound by the British. So what convention the British signed covered us. However, Grant Adams put in place a Protection of Wages Act that mirrored to some extent the conventions. And I'm going to leave you with this. When the ILO discovered that the act that we would pass did not exactly mirror the convention, they told the government, no, you got to make changes to the legislation to make it to conform with the convention. Barrow did that in 1975. And would you believe the Barbados Labour Party MPs, Labour Party MPs,
Hmm.
I have written it down, the date. I always keep it to hand. You know, you must forgive me, but I'm a writer. I write down things. Um, they said in Hansard, May 20th, 1975, page 1590, the borough had to tell them, look, I am stating categorically that every act that comes in here dealing with employment binds the crown. And the opposition is saying, no, it doesn't. Borough was trying to protect the workers, the government workers. And the Barbados Labour Party MPs, Henry Ford, Lindsey Bull, and all them were saying, no, that's wrong. You can't do that. So they had this anti-worker bias, not just now, going going all the way back to my certain knowledge. I just write them down. I keep them. I
Well,
keep them at the
and
hand.
that's for you're very much like Miss McLean. She writes on everything. But Kimar, were you finished? Somebody actually was saying they wanted to know if you were finished. What what you were saying, the points you were making, and we have another 5 minutes on the show. Is there you had anything else you were saying, Kimar?
No, no, it was just supportive of what Caswell was saying.
Okay.
Um, in terms of Bar, I think a lot was said already, and I firmly agree to the positions taken by everyone as it relates to the scenario at the Barbados Revenue Authority. But what we should look at, like bro, like all of the other state enterprises, is if bro is up to date on reporting its financial statements to the government, right? Because a lot of SOEs are not up to scratch in terms of finding financial report. And as far as I know, under the Public Financial Management Act, all SOEs, inclusive of BRA, are supposed to be submitting financial statements at the end of every month, a financial report at the end of every month. And if BRA is not in alignment with that, they should. And I could assure you, when the Auditor General reaches in and he finds discrepancies, then that information should be sent directly to the Director of Public Prosecutions to ensure that we rid Barbados of this type of corruption.
Yes.
I
Thank
just
you.
received a WhatsApp message from a consultant. He's a labor relations consultant. He's saying BRA has given 1 year contracts to employees at the professional level and failed to renew them. This is a breach of the ERA, Employment Rights Act. He said they call them consultants, but they're employees under the control test of the Employment Rights Act. Now, you see, we have all people listening to this show, Marcy, and and I'm grateful for their interventions when
Yes.
they send them. So please keep on sending them.
Yes, and
And
it validates what you're saying. It validates what you're saying, Mr. Franklin. But well, it's 10:03, and we are coming to a close. We're coming to a close. Want to thank everybody for joining tonight. Thank you all for being part of this very educational show tonight. And I'm ready to make an announcement. And my what's going on here? My computer is acting up. Why? So okay, okay. There we go. All right. So I'm just gonna make a special announcement at this time. Dear loyal opposition, we wish you to be informed that I, Marcia Weeks of the Marcia Weeks Show, was served by official courier with a 4-page pre-action letter dated February 26, 2024, and headed Elliot D. Motley and Company Attorneys at Law on behalf of Prime Minister Mia Motley. Please note this matter has been referred to our lawyers. Thank you. Well, tonight, guys, we want to just thank everybody for joining. I'm seeing people are still on, and we just want to thank them. Thank them so much. Ramin was on from very, very early. Monica in Square 4. Arlene, Galviz, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining tonight. Of course, we're going to be back again next week. I mean, next week on Monday, tomorrow. Next week, what? On Monday, we're going to be on again, with the Marcy Richo. So we will see you all tomorrow. Thanks to the panel. Thank you, Miss McLean. You were on from very very early. 6:30. We've been going. Somebody said, "Marcy, you look
Yes.
tired." Well, I've been going. you know. Okay. Mr. Franklin came on early too, and we know Kimar was very very busy speaking out tonight. Yeah. So God bless you all, and we will see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 7 o'clock, not 6:30. 7 o'clock. All right. God bless you all.
All right. Good night.
Take
Good
care.
night,
Bye bye.
everybody. Bye
Yes.
bye.